minute or two.
Yeah, because I think we're going to have a lot of. Nick contacted everyone that he's using. Anybody who's using their question, he contacted them to let them know they were going to be on tonight. So it's possible that we'll have.
Yeah, we are going. Usually takes it's like a 10 or 15-second delay. Oh yeah, I don't know.
Right. There's somebody else that always comes in as anonymous participant.
Yeah. I want to know who they are. Yeah, if you submitted a question and you received a message from me saying we've selected your question, you're part of the exclusive club called Everybody. Everybody got selected. Some people asked like 3 or 4, and I just kind of picked a couple, but
Yeah, we'll
for the
get
most
through what we
part-
can. Usually we end up kind of distracted with the chat anyway if there's people on.
There's the distinct possibility this turns into a 2-parter.
I almost mixed my beer. That
Does seem to happen.
a bad what? Yeah, it'd be like a black and tan.
There's a whole biblical scripture about not mixing old wineskins with new ones. So
Right.
keep that in mind.
Just the important stuff.
Mhm.
Adam, the answer is no.
What did Adam ask?
If he's running a sponge filter, does he still need to run an Airstone?
No. But you can if you like the way Airstones look.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny that the way Airstones actually work isn't the bubbles produce,
Right.
It's they move water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you want to get really crazy, I recently learned that you can. It's called charging sponge filter, and that's when you can like retrofit an Airstone inside it, so it's producing bubbles on the inside.
Wow.
The only advantage to doing that though is the bubbles are quieter.
No, you're wrong. So I always do it. It makes them more efficient because the smaller, more numerous bubbles increase lift over large bubbles.
Yep.
In theory,
You guys, if you guys have banter between the two of you, you're gonna have to both be like
Like you're gonna
cheek
have
to
to.
cheek.
It's
Because
gonna
that,
be real.
that
real
banter's
fight.
good. But
Right.
if you guys are
it was the plan all along.
The only way we could possibly reduce banter.
Ben's like,
Looks like
if
we got
make
some-
them share a mic, they'll shut up once in a while.
Exactly. Only to keep you guys in check. Hey, cheers to the YouTube members out there signing on. Glad to see you guys are here. Welcome. Or you're all. I don't know if you guys are good. Y'all are here, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Nick, was that you?
that was me.
Okay.
I'm gonna do my best to kind of keep an eye on the chat a little bit.
Cool.
Thanks. I did see you answered a comment on our YouTube channel the other day, but
Did
it
you
looked like
see
it
the-
was from someone you knew.
No.
No?
Did you see the follow up?
It was.
So
Yeah, it was like somebody who was like, why don't I see this handsome guy in videos anymore? It's like, that must be his mom.
I have no idea.
You
who
have
that-
no
No
idea.
idea. They said, "Hey, what plant is this? This plant's really cool." I was like, "Hey, it's a crinum, crinum natans." And they go, "Great, who's the handsome guy?"
It's
What was the
incredible.
name of the person?
It wasn't descriptive. Like, no.
Just like a random
Yeah.
YouTube username that
Mhm.
didn't even stand out.
Ask your
Mhm.
girlfriend. Like,
I don't know. And she's just super supportive.
Yeah,
on
I'm
it.
like just going around like lifting you up all over social media.
He really needs
That'd be
this right
great.
now. We call him handsome on a fish video from 2 years ago.
Right. What do you guys think? Should we get started? Feels weird sitting in this spot. I'm
Mhm.
gonna move this way.
All right, I want to answer Christina's question too, because I think it's pretty simple as well.
Okay.
Before we get started, you want to do a saltwater tank with just cultured live rock to watch the little hitchhikers? What setup would you recommend? Whatever you want. Put some rocks in and then feed
Yeah.
it.
And move the water.
Move the water.
Move the water. Move the water. Move
A
the
jar,
water.
a tank.
Yeah, I was gonna say my recommendation. Honestly, I feel like it would be the most fun if you just get some like ridiculous shaped vase,
Yeah.
put some rocks in it, and then just put in a power head
Or an
call it-
airstone
Yeah.
or I
with
don't
small bubbles.
care.
Yeah.
Yeah, call it a day.
And then
like-
just like
Yeah.
feed it with some powdered food twice a week. You'll see stuff.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Teeny amounts of powdered food.
Do you have that?
But going one step further, put it in whatever tank you want, and put like a good a good wave maker on it, like a one of the sea chays, moving that water, move that water, move that water.
Pretty simple.
I do did set up that little vase downstairs, and I cut a piece of zinnia and I put it in there, and it is growing.
The one by the front
it is
window?
growing, so
The
that's
no
the only
flow.
It's
circulation.
looking
That's
kind
the
of
only-
frothy.
It does look gross.
It does look. I'm gonna break it.
It needs circulation.
No, keep it going, but just do a big water change on
Okay.
it. Leave it. I would love you to leave it for a little while longer.
Okay.
Do you want us to leave it no flow? It's just that the surface gets filmy.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Film
Yeah,
is a
but
We'll
the
keep
zinnia
tracking
is
it.
still cruising. Like it's
There's an article out there about, I think it's by Li Ching, right, who is the inventor of the protein skimmer, and he did what? Maybe it wasn't him. It was that era, but they did a 5-gallon vase, and the only circulation in it was pulsing zinnia, and he kept the royal grandma in it for a year and a half.
That's sweet. Yeah, that's kind of what
Yeah.
you're trying to pull off.
Mhm.
Reading about like Li Ching's early reef tanks is actually just great. He's just like, yeah, I went to the ocean, I picked up some rocks, put them in
The
water. and it
Wild
worked."
West.
Yep.
He's like,
Oh, yeah.
I put a limewood air stone in there,
Yes,
and I noticed this froth building up. So I guess I'm gonna make a protein skimmer now.
I'm gonna invent a protein skimmer now.
that's where they
BRB.
came from. Yeah.
I think probably my favorite story like that is Takashi Amano's story of where they were like, we should put CO2 in tanks, and they were just like drinking beer one night, and they were like, well, we need more carbon, and someone's like, well, I got some club soda, and then that's what they were doing for like months apparently before
Yeah.
they were like, oh, we can get pressurized tanks.
No,
It's
he
like
was-
a real
he was
life
drinking-
Dr. House moment.
He was drinking whiskey club sodas at the bar. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Are we ready?
Yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Awesome.
Are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Welcome to the latest Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast. About that. One more try.
It's not a live episode if you don't screw up the intro.
Welcome to the latest Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast, brought to you from the Aquarium Rush Studios in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. My name is Ben,
I'm Amy.
And I'm Calder.
and because this is a listener episode, we've got Nick joining us.
Hey, I'm back.
Yay. Thanks, Nick.
And as a special bonus, guess who's back for this episode?
It's me.
Charles is, Charles is here. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys.
Now we
gotta-
really got a party going.
That's right.
We got a
That's
full
right.
house tonight.
Mhm.
We do. As you all know, this is one of our, I think we're going to go with legitimately world famous listener episodes.
Yeah, I think we can say that.
Yeah. We have people from all around the world, and let's face it, we are famous, at least in our own minds.
This is also our 200th episode tonight.
Woohoo! Cheers to that.
Which is
Cheers.
crazy.
Hard to believe. Clink. Nice, good clink. Clink.
I love it. Congratulations on that. This is definitely an accomplishment to have it our 200th episode.
It is almost unfathomable to think of there being over 200 hours of our voices recorded. I guess over 300, right? They're pretty much always an hour and a half.
Yeah. You guys have put up with me for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. What were you thinking?
You guys
And
were
it's
thinking?
been
Yeah.
5 years this year, I think, too.
I think you're
5
right.
years, 200 episodes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5 years in May.
Wow.
Crazy. Crazy long road. Before we go any further, there is something we have to do.
We have to do our shameless plug. Go over to watercolors.shop and see if we've got anything for your tank. We've got lots of live plants. I'm going to be adding some more killies up here soon. And we've got aquarium supplies and aquarium-related merch. Mugs, tote bags, hats, all sorts of stuff. So head over and see if there's anything we can get for you.
See, I take issue with the fact that you said anything you need in an aquarium. No, there's everything you want in your aquarium.
There we go.
Exactly.
It is definitely the case that this is a live streamed episode. So many of you are enjoying all of the crazy antics that you get to see. If you're a YouTube member, you get to see these crazy antics every single week.
Yeah, like watching me and Calder share a mic.
Which is pretty entertaining, I
It
have to
is,
say.
It's
yeah.
a good time.
It is a good time.
And honestly, we've been really lucky for the members that we've had. The amount of input and the quality of input we've had from them is so spectacular that it's really it's hard to remember doing it without them.
It was not long ago that I said to Nick, hey, we should think about a listener episode. And he's like, yeah, we need to get a few more questions. And today he came to me and said, yeah, we have way more questions than I think we could do in one episode. So
Tell them to
Great.
stop.
no, never tell them to stop. Just means we can do more of these
He's
episodes.
just
because-
bothering Nick.
Get to them when we get to them.
Yeah,
And
these are
today
a
I
lot
think
of
we're
fun.
trying to get through as many as we can that were submitted. But if any of our listeners, anyone in the chat has questions, please just toss them out there. We'll try to get to them when we can. Even if we don't get to them during the episode, we'll still try to get to them at the end. And if we can't, we'll try to hold them for the next listener's questions.
Basically, what you're saying is we're going to answer the questions. Darn it, we're going to do it.
We'll get them.
Yes.
Yes. Come hell or high water, those questions will be answered. And high water.
It is an aquarium thing, so you know.
Yeah.
All right, we got everything out of the way.
Yeah, let's do this first one.
Ready
Let's see
to
what we
jump
got.
into some questions.
You bet.
Okay.
I have a cool one. This question is submitted from Adam P. And he said, I've been researching my own state laws for fish keeping and came across 2 towns that have banned the sale of fish.
Mhm.
What
Oh,
are your thoughts
yeah.
on this? How can we fight this if it happens in our own town? So he provided a link, and I pulled it up here. I'm going to just kind of paraphrase a little bit from this article. Arlington, Massachusetts made history in May by passing the first expanded retail pet sales ban to include fishes. Let's see. Yeah, it had initially applied to mammals, reptiles, amphibians, birds, arachnids. This is the first that has applied to fish. Have we heard of this before?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's so bizarre, especially in this case too, because it was like she's like a professional photographer, the person who like championed this and sort of pushed it forward. Not like a scientist, not somebody involved in the aquarium industry, just somebody who saw something they didn't like taking place in their community and advocated for it. Advocated against it, I guess.
Can I get on a salt box?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you say salt box? You did.
Box. I
You
did.
It's more applicable.
I think
Oh,
it is
that's
more.
so
That's good. I
good.
didn't even do that on purpose.
I'm gonna
We
start
should say
doing that
that.
on
I like
purpose.
that one. Yeah, that's
That'll
good.
end up in the next bingo sheet.
Yes,
That is
can I get on a
good.
salt box?
Heck yeah. I have heard a little bit of, not a little bit, I've heard some criticism out there from some people I respect about some of the hard points that we push around here. Like, you shouldn't keep iridescent sharks in a tank. They shouldn't be in the hobby. They shouldn't be allowed in the hobby. And other criticisms about how, well, it's just fish. I mean, those all happen all the time, blah, blah, blah. You should just go away. But even some people that I care and respect, and people that I think in a lot of ways are doing it right, are kind of coming back at us with this whole monster fish thing that I think is a problem. I think is contributing to why they're being banned in Arlington, Massachusetts, right? So what can we do as hobbyists? The very first thing we can do is we can do this as ethically as possible. We can keep fish that we can keep generationally. If you can't keep a fish generationally, we probably shouldn't be keeping it. We should keep fish that we know we can at least keep for their natural lifespan and do everything that we can to keep them for their entire lifespan. No, don't buy a fish and say when it gets too big, I'll trade it to somebody else. Just like you would never say, I love puppies, so I'll get a puppy. As soon as it grows into a dog, I'll give it to somebody else. I'll find a new home and just get another puppy. That's just as, I'm not going to say a naughty word, that's just as stupid as far as I'm concerned. Yes, puppies are more valuable to me, but it matters that much. There's the first thing you can do. Be ethical about your fish keeping. Don't give people like this photographer, whom I'd love to genuinely, if this person would be open to this, genuinely sit down and have a conversation with.
Yeah.
But this photographer has all kinds of legitimate ammunition to push this kind of legislation through.
It sucks to be in a position when someone like that is like, XYZ is wrong with the industry, and the only thing you can say is, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
But now what we need to be able to say is, yes, you're right, but we are doing everything we possibly can to try and change it.
And I think, too, a lot of the pushback from industry is like, yeah, that's a problem, but we need it in order to function. Like
yeah, we
it's
can
like,
only survive if we do this. That's
Yeah, like-
the mentality.
Our economy only works if we have slaves picking the cotton. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Figure out
going
a
for
way
the
to make it
jugular,
work.
but there's... And apparently, it doesn't work if... Like, that isn't what we need to survive, because that's what makes people mad enough to want to kill us.
Yeah.
So I pulled up this actual amendment here. and I think there's something important to note. The fines for this offense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First offense is $50. Second offense is $100. Third and thereafter, $300. Feels like a pretty light slap on the wrist. Like,
Is it?
But that's okay. Slap on the wrist. But that means a store cannot function.
Yeah.
no, I agree. I
Yes.
agree.
But it means you're not necessarily punishing those single people who are selling stuff as
Oh, I see.
harshly, I think.
Yeah.
And by the way, Arlington, Massachusetts is a suburb of Boston. And there are places all over Boston where you can go buy aquarium fish, right? So the consequences for the people of Arlington are minimal.
Yeah.
Mm.
The consequences for if there was a store in Arlington are big. Maybe it was just big box stores. Maybe they shouldn't be selling fish at all.
You really got to wonder what the story is there.
Yeah, the consequences for the snowball effect that this could have on the rest of the hobby, that is monumental.
I do think it should be noted too that this, like, it doesn't seem like aquarists generally pay attention to these kind of legislations until after they've already been put into effect.
Right.
So maybe as hobbyists, we just need to be a little bit more like aware of our like, if we're gonna participate in this hobby, we should have a rough understanding of how the laws work around it and just be like aware. Especially because most of these bans are happening at a local level, and
Right.
at local level, you have input at a city hall meeting or a town hall meeting. So,
Yeah, you just have to get enough people to vote for it,
Yeah.
really.
That's exactly the way to say this, right? The loudest, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, the loudest voices get heard. So how you can avoid that, how you can make that not happen from a, like, this industry is what it is, how you can make it not happen if you hear about it happening, go be that loud voice, call your representative, go to the town hall meeting, make it known that, hey, I am against this type of legislation.
But don't fight the legislation after it's already happening.
Right.
Hold your community accountable before it does.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. What? So I grew up in a small town, and one of the things that like people really don't think about at the local level is that like I like partially agree with the squeaky wheel gets the grease analogy here, but it's also like in a lot of these communities sometimes only one person says something, and so like since the only person says something, everyone's just like, oh yeah, let's go along with that. Like it's really
That's
easy
the loudest
to derail.
voice that gets heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, do
but-
pet stores creep you out? Then vote for this.
Well, it's
Right.
not even that though. It's like you only get one side. So like I've seen a lot of things derailed just because literally one other person said, "Wait, no, that's not right," and everyone's
Yeah.
like, "Oh shit, sorry."
Right.
You know.
If no one attends that town hall meeting to disagree with the person making the statement, nothing's
Yeah.
going to happen.
So it is somewhat
Yeah.
alarming, but also very intriguing to see how people can make a difference.
I've had the rebuttal being that, well, I shouldn't have to care about the politics if I want to have a fish tank, and that's like
It's a
Some,
privileged
like-
point of view.
Yeah,
You
it's
are correct. You shouldn't have to care about the politics if you want to have fish. You
But if-
shouldn't have to.
yeah.
But if you want to continue having a fish tank in this society with the way things are going, you have to care,
I also
or
think
it's
too,
going to go away.
at some point it's such a mild inconvenience for it's something that yeah, like if you feel like you're going to be so detrimentally impacted by the fish tank your aquarium going away, then I mean it's such a little impact to actually like it's not that much work to keep up to date. Like
And the same logic flows for someone who might take their righteous indignation towards their legislators to improve the industry, not just ban it. Where, you know, if you feel passionate about increased legislation for invasive species or for poor husbandry, then you have that same power.
Yeah.
That law being passed was not a surprise to anyone paying attention.
No.
Notice what I said there. Paying attention.
Yeah, I have a hot take that I'm going to throw out in this discussion too. I'm piggybacking off of Calder being like it's such a mild inconvenience, and this is a general opinion I have about like the industry as a whole and hobbyists. But like, if you're so inconvenienced by sticking up for this hobby like that, or driving an hour to pick up fish that are actually well taken care of, then My personal opinion is then you're not the type of person who should be keeping living things as a hobby.
Right.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Well, we could go on that one.
We
forever.
could, yeah, that could be a whole episode.
I figured that was a big one to start on.
Okay, I'll step off my salt box.
Let's go to
For
the
now.
opposite direction and do a funny one.
Sweet.
This is a question from Way. They were the one who sent us in the bingo sheets.
I love
Yeah.
it. That was really fun.
So Way asks, do Ocellaris clownfish go to heaven?
No. No.
They go to the other place.
And then they say, as a matter of fact, where would specific fish go? To the big fluval in the sky or the overflow at the center of the earth?
What's the fish equivalent of purgatory?
Right.
Right?
That's where a lot of them
You're
go.
in the QT tank forever.
Hang on. They did add some other funny comments that I'll share too if I can find this. They say that, yes, Ocellaris clownfish go to heaven because they're forgiven for the time that they beat their female up. Wait. They said they'll let it slide that the female just beat the crap out of the male 5 times this week.
Yeah, sorry, if you choose violence every time.
I don't forgive them for the amount of time they've bit the webbing between my fingers.
Yeah, see, they don't have to do that.
They
They want to
don't.
hurt you.
They could ask you to move nicely, and they
Mhm.
don't. They,
Okay, but I have a counterpoint.
Yeah.
I do. So this is a fish. You're a fisherman.
Yeah.
A fisher person.
Yeah.
Right? And orange is a great color to use as a fishing lure.
Yep.
Right? What color are clownfish?
Orange.
They're orange. What is the, and I'm going to take the analogy a couple of steps here because this is fun,
Okay.
right?
I'm with you so far.
What is the fastest tail shape?
Yeah. Yep.
Forked,
Forked. Yep.
right? What is the opposite of a forked tail?
A round tail.
An Ocellaris shaped tail,
Yep.
right? So a horribly swimming, fishing lured colored fish that survives in the face of diversity? No, they're going straight up.
Must be a demon.
I'm just going to share this comment in the chat that really got me. It said, there's a really good t-shirt design in there for Fish Purgatory. Welcome to Infinite QT.
Yeah, exactly. I think
All fish go to heaven.
no, parrot cichlids don't.
Yeah.
It's not. They weren't the ones who committed the crime against nature. It wasn't their fault.
Ooh, that could open up another can of worms.
In
that I
fact, they're
think
not
that's gonna be
capable
better.
of committing a crime against nature on their own.
That's true. They would get eaten.
They're too stupid and usually infertile.
Right. All right. Next question.
All right, let's move on. Aiden M asks, I have a 90-gallon saltwater tank and it's heavily filtered. I'm going back and forth between a predator reef with some maroon clowns, snowflake, fuzzy lionfish, or a standard reef tank with saddlebacks, a tamini, other peaceful fish. What are some pros and cons of each option? This is just a preference question,
Yeah.
but feel free
no,
to chime in.
They asked for pros and cons, and I appreciate. I mean, I think it's there. There are pros and cons that go beyond preference, right?
Sure.
You can't keep any shrimp with your predator tank. I like shrimp.
Tramp.
I like shrimp. Plainer shrimp, sexy shrimp, pistol shrimp,
Harlequin shrimp.
Harlequin shrimp. I love saddleback clowns. To me, like if we would do a top 5 most underrated clownfish, it would be a short episode, but saddlebacks would be on there because they work as a group. They're one of the few that works as a group. Tamini tangs are fantastic. The fuzzy dwarf lion and the maroon clowns, you need to let those maroon clowns grow out a bit before you put a fuzzy dwarf lion with them. Remember, the body size of a fuzzy dwarf lion is the size of fish that it can eat, not the perceived mouth size. So watch that a little bit.
I think you could still do kind of a community reef tank if your only predators are a maroon clown and a
Fuzzy dwarf,
Fuzzy dwarf,
and snowflake.
the snowflake eel. Like I
Yeah.
don't think those are
You probably
super
could
limiting.
still have the Tamini
You could definitely
if it was
still have
big
the
enough.
Tamini. You could probably still have like an angelfish, like a coral beauty in there.
So it's really just
Mhm.
eventually you're going to run out of space. You
Yeah.
can still do your
Yeah.
corals, so
Yeah.
it might not be an either or.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah. I would choose saddlebacks over maroon clowns, and therefore eliminate the fuzzy dwarf and put other ones in there. Personally,
Yeah.
you would probably pick maroon clowns because I
I-
know you're waiting for a pair.
I know. I was just about to say, Pro, you get to have a maroon clownfish pair. Con, you have to have a maroon clownfish pair.
Double con, you have to try and establish a maroon
Yes.
clownfish pair,
And like
which is hard.
it is.
Yeah.
I think that process is fun, and I want to be very clear. That's why I want to do it. It takes time and effort. That's effort and time I enjoy. If that doesn't sound fun to you, don't do it.
Yeah, pairing saddleback clowns, put them together. Pairing maroon clowns, 6 months of watching one try and torture another while they decide if they're going to like each other, and having a space dedicated to do that, and a constant observation.
I'm just hoping you pull him out before she does kill him for real.
Right.
Do maroon clowns go to heaven?
No. I was just about to say that.
That's pretty clear.
Well, she doesn't, but he might.
I was about to say, I think those McCullochs I spent 4 months of,
Yeah.
I'll say, chaperone dates.
Yes.
And it was
Mhm.
literally like I had to build up at the beginning of it of like, all right, I'm going to try for 10 minutes. If she doesn't bite him in 10 minutes, then I'll pull him out. And
Yeah.
it's like
In our
whichever-
display tank?
that one. Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
spawned twice that we know of.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the most effort I've ever put into a pair of but I
Yeah.
loved it. And every
Oh,
time
yeah.
I walk up to that tank and I see that pair and they're still doing stuff, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of that is the pair we have that naturally established still has a tighter bond. That's the tough thing with the clownfish.
They're in love.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you can't force it, even when
Also-
you can.
The customer who took home the other naturally formed pair is like, they've been the easiest pair of clowns he's ever owned.
Cool.
Yeah.
But also,
That happens with maroons too. I have
Yeah.
seen naturally formed pairs of maroons clowns that there was no effort put into the pairing. Worked like a champ.
we should
You
just-
wish you could just give them a marriage counseling.
Right.
Really, what's the problem here? What are you trying to communicate when you won't stop attacking him?
Let's
Yeah.
get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, the one that I like, my favorite example of that was we had that really old, she would have been 14-year-old cinnamon clown at the time.
At least.
Mm,
And I tried to pair her up with a couple different males, and she's like, nope, not that one.
Mhm.
Nope, not that one. And then at some point, I introduced one, and she was immediately like, that one.
That's the one.
And I was like, I don't know what the variable here
he
is.
was like all of 1 inch long. He like was barely recognizable as the same species.
I
but
remember like a customer came in as I was watching him like 5 minutes later, and he's like, "You're really intently watching this." And I was like, "Well, he's 6 months old and she's 14 years old," and he was just like, "Whoa, May, December, am I right?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
And she's got a few homicides already. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right, ready to move on?
Yep.
Just lost it. Here we go. Question from Carlos T. This is for Ben.
Okay.
He said that you once mentioned saltwater angelfish are highly intelligent and require some kind of stimulation or entertainment. How do you suggest you provide that for them in an aquarium? Calder looks excited to answer this too.
Yeah.
But Ben, go ahead and
Yeah.
jump in.
They just that's part of the reason that their tank needs to be a little bit bigger, just so that there's more stuff to do.
Kind of exploratory
Yeah,
enrichment.
and not alone.
The thing about angelfish is that they are genuinely one of the few fish that I do think can get bored, and that's when they start presenting problems.
I'm thinking of like, what are some good, you know how we do some type of enrichment activities with our sharks? What are puzzles
yeah.
and toys that you can give to your angelfish that are achievable for them?
So I actually do this all the time with my pair of coral beauties.
Love it.
Part of it's to like reduce their aggression with one another, because if they're doing something else, they're not beating each other up.
when they're bored, they go to bite everything that
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
within reach to bite.
So, they sell these little like practice golf balls that look like mini wiffle balls.
I've seen those.
You can fill them up with nori and tie them. They float and tie them to a piece of fishing line, and then tie
I
it to
love
a
it.
frag plug, and then
Yeah.
it sinks and it sits in the water. And they have a really hard time getting those. Zoomed also makes a floating algae clip that's attached to a little ball on a string. That one works really well.
Baby and puppy toys are
Yeah.
often the perfect size for fish, and they're designed to be chewed on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
PVC with holes drilled into it works really well. Yeah, but it's impressive how long an angelfish will work at it. Because like if we tried that with like some of the tangs we have in the shop, they'd take one attempt, and if they couldn't get at the food immediately, they just move on and give up and never consider it again. But like the angel I've kept, especially my male who have had longer, will work at it for hours, like 8 hours. The entire time the light's on, he's working on trying to get that food out of the ball.
A tang is gonna go eat that. I can't. Okay.
Caller, you're telling me you let 8 hours pass before you just help them a little bit?
Well, he gets other meals in between the 8 hours. But like, if I put like a piece of gel food inside the ping pong ball, he works at it all day.
That's a good recommendation.
Enrichment is supposed to be hard.
Yes.
Exactly.
If it's easy, they get.
That's
bored.
why I'm so enriched with life.
Because you're fed through a ping pong ball?
Exactly.
Keeps Ben entertained for hours.
The next time in a lab we're on the verge of tears because an experiment can't work, I'm going to go, I feel so enriched right now.
Yeah.
Carlos has another question, freshwater question. He said his favorite freshwater species is Monocerhis polyacanthurus, the Amazon leaf fish. Sorry, I butchered that one.
Yes.
It's the only fish he considered doing a species tank for. He'd love to hear our thoughts on whether it's an obligate piscivore and any other challenges presented with maintaining them long term. Can I try that scientific name one more time?
Yeah.
Yep.
Monocerhis polyacanthus. Better.
It's definitely an obligate piscivore. It's whether or not you can get it to eat frozen fish or not. It's going to be your struggle.
So this is a fish that does have a slow metabolism. So if you have a colony of guppies or Endler's live bearers or one of those live bearers that's producing a bunch, you can use this as a food source for this fish. It is one of the, I think there's 2 fish on my list right now that I'm not sure how to get onto frozen food. All of the other fish you can get onto frozen food, you need to get onto frozen food and stop eating live food. The South American leaf fish, they're such a motion predator that. Here's what I would do to try it. I would start with get like a colony of guppies going in a separate tank and feed it sparingly. At this point, what you're doing is you're trying to convert this fish over to prepared foods. So you want to feed it enough for it to survive and be okay, but not necessarily, I don't want to use the term not thrive because you want the fish to thrive, but you want that fish to be hungry. It's a little mean, but yeah, you got to work at that a little bit. So feed it baby guppies and some slightly larger guppies. And then get like a toothpick or something and start freezing some guppies. Or use the mini silver sides. I've seen those available now as well. And the way that we did this with the saltwater anglerfish was we literally would play submarine with frozen silver sides. Like they would swim around the yeah, exactly. We would swim them around the tank and have them like the live feed. You can kind of see what I'm doing with my hands here a little bit, right? Like it was on a feeding stick, and we'd swim it around the tank and have it behave like a fish. And as soon as that anglerfish like showed interest, we'd have the fish show interest, and he'd go over, and pretty soon you'd get that fish, and we got that fish to take. As soon as it eats its first frozen fish, you're set. And then it was not long after that, we did not have to do the fancy dance, dump a frozen fish in there, and the anglerfish would take it down. I haven't tried this with South American anglerfish, but I think it would work.
I think it would help, too, to like mimic the natural water parameters a little bit. Just get them a little bit more comfortable, because if they're already a little stressed to adjust the water parameters, generally fish are going to be fine. But if maybe we're trying to get them to eat some prepared foods, that just might help take that little bit of stress off, make it a little bit more of an option.
Yeah,
and that's
push that appetite as much as you can.
Yeah,
right.
Pretty low pH.
Yeah, black water. But I do think that's going to be a hard fish to get to not eat live food.
I think you're right. I don't think it's impossible.
I don't think it's impossible either.
But it will be a challenge. That one and the Southeast Asian needlefish are the 2.
Yeah.
Southeast Asian needlefish, I think, is a little easier because they're a surface feeder.
Yeah.
And so the way to do it with the Southeast Asian needlefish is you drop, again, raise your own guppies to feed the fish. Do not buy feeder fish to feed, or raise white clouds, but raise your own food if you're trying this with an obligatory live food eater. Yeah. Raise them yourself. Did I emphasize that enough? Drop the fish in, right? And those fish are surface feeders. They're gonna see that splash and they're gonna strike. And I successfully got a Southeast Asian needlefish to strike at frozen food. Now it spit it out when it was like, it grabbed it and spit it out. It wouldn't take it. But I think it would have been a matter of time to convert that one over, and it might work with the South American fish too. But it's challenging.
This might be this might be a scenario where it might actually be easier to keep a guppy tank culturing and running than trying to because their metabolism are slow enough where I think like a 10-gallon tank with a lot of endlers will produce enough food for the long-term health of the fish.
They're gonna get to 5 inches when they're mature.
Yes,
so you need more like a 30 or 40 gallon.
Yeah, but still, I think you could, in theory.
It's doable.
Yeah.
Well, and if you've got a fish room going, especially, you've got enough around that you could make
all your
happen.
culls into your leaf fish.
Or decide whether you really just want a Tenepoma, because
yeah.
Tenepoma Kudarastra is really close.
Yeah.
And then what's the other? There's a Schomburg leaf fish, which is
it a Nandis?
Yeah.
A Nandis. Yeah.
Nice.
And there's a smaller datnoid too that would. I forgot the name of that. I forgot because there's a lot of those datnoids get too large, but there's the little guy that would do the same thing.
Yep. Agreed.
I'd like to remind everybody at the table that we generally like to pick our favorite question and send out something fun, like a free T-shirt. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Oh yeah.
And make sure to write it down if you have it, because we'll forget by then.
Yeah. Or if you hear a good question during this recording session, make note of that too.
I'm taking notes right now. I'm not on my phone. I'm taking notes.
All right. That said, I have 2 cool questions here. I'm going to let the table vote: freshwater or saltwater. Which direction for this next one?
Salt.
All right, let's do salt then.
All right. This is from Lachlan, who I just saw in the chat joined our membership. So
thank you very much.
Welcome.
He said he's thinking about setting up his first saltwater tank. He lives in a very rural area without access to an LFS. He's not certain whether he wants to install his own RODI unit yet for cost reasons. However, he said he lives about 60 meters from a beach on the Atlantic Ocean. What are some limitations of simply using ocean water for a saltwater tank? He's guessing pests and parameters are considerations.
Temperature. We're on the Atlantic.
He thinks he'll just end up doing an RODI, but as a thought experiment, what would you consider if you went this route?
I would totally do it. The challenge to me is not going to be the parameters of the ocean water. It's going to be top off for evaporation.
Yeah.
Now, if you only have to top off for evaporation and you can do your water changes with ocean water, buying RODI water from a local grocery store at 15, 20 gallons at a time, not the end of the world.
Or could you go all foraged, let's say, and do rainwater?
Ooh.
Yeah.
If you collected,
Depends on the rainwater.
Right.
Depends on the rainwater.
So my only issue is inshore, you might have too many, depending on where you live.
Yeah.
You might have too many contaminants. Like there already might have too much potassium or not potassium, phosphate or nitrate contaminant, especially if you're in a rural agricultural area.
Right.
So in that case, you might have to set up something to filter that water.
Yeah.
Mildly, but carbon and some Purigen should do that for you just fine.
Lachlan, if you're in the chat or you want to send a message, we're curious to see kind of where you're located. I think that's probably a factor to consider.
Yeah. Atlantic coast in a rural area would be much better than Tampa.
Yeah.
He did say his area is quite remote and unpopulated. There's not a lot of traffic near the beach or in the water.
So then that's good sense. A worst case scenario too, if you boil that water and get it up to a temp of 200 Celsius.
Except then you're also going to...
Yeah, you're going to lose some.
You're going to lose water and need to...
Top off. But if you're getting RO from the grocery store, you can get... if you cover your pot, you weren't not going to lose that much water.
But we're really getting close to just buy salt and mix salt water.
Yeah, but at 200
the other side of it, though, is if you're going to go collect stuff, you might get cool stuff in it.
Yeah.
But just don't expect it to look like a standard reef tank.
Yeah.
And if that's what you want, then no, you don't want to do anything.
Well, the only reason I was
that.
saying 200C is a lot of your waste, like nitrogenous waste, will turn into nitrogen gas and gas off. so you can actually reduce your so like if you lived in like a polluted area, you can actually make it pretty safe to use.
But I'm thinking if you boil salt water with evaporation, you're gonna need to top off that salt water before you even add it. At this point,
So I actually tried this at home.
Okay.
Because I was like, I wonder if I can reduce my salt use. And it wasn't as much loss as so I only boiled about half a gallon. And I lost like less than a quarter of it. So if
Yeah. What you got?
Nova Scotia.
oh yeah, no, just use your tap.
Use your tap.
Get
Get it up to temp and use it.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, get it up to temp and use it. Yeah. But again, in Nova Scotia, you are going to need to find a source for top-off water.
Yeah.
Because salt does not evaporate. So you will need good, clean, fresh water for top-off. No idea what your municipalities or wells are going to be like in Nova Scotia.
But if it's me, I've just got 20 less than 5 gallon jars with every weird thing I could find in it, not one big mixed reef tank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other thing too, if we're only considering our water for top off, it's not like you need that much production that fast.
Right.
So
Right.
some of the small like screw on, like they just screw onto the aerator of your sink,
Yeah.
where they produce a cup like only like 2 gallons an hour. That might be a good option because if you're just topping off, you only need like
Hey,
5 gallons a week. if
you
it's
don't
a
need the
small one.
$250
Yeah,
like
you can-
barrel version.
You can just get away with like a cheap already screw on RDI that's like $40. So
If you put something together, you better send us some pictures.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds really cool.
One thing that I would know about this strat is that these temperate, like coastal environments, their salinity actually changes with the season. So you definitely want a way
True.
to test your salinity, by the way.
What kind of swings would you estimate? I'm curious.
Depends on where exactly, but it can be pretty wild in the coastal areas.
However, those changes would be gradual,
Yeah.
and even gradual changes in your reef tank within 2 or 3%, not
Yeah.
going to be a problem.
But like some shifts of these, like in seasons, if like season shift happens quickly, it can be pretty drastic. That's why a lot of
Right.
these like algal blooms will happen. It's because suddenly like a current shifted,
Yeah, yeah.
and so just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
I think
Cool
you're
thought
pretty.
experiment.
I think you pretty comfortably mitigate it though, like because
Yeah.
if you know like, oh man, it's springtime, so there's gonna be a lot of runoff, then I'll take a couple extra gallons during the winter month to keep it in my garage. Like
Yeah.
it's a refractometer.
Thank
you. Yep.
I think D-Rock's advice is pretty good too. Those pictures work pretty well for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
But I was just looking up Cape Breton Island and Lachlan. We're all coming over,
Yeah,
leaving
we're
after
on our way.
this.
Right.
Oh, maybe we'll wait 6 months.
Yeah, that's true. It's really cold and dark there right
But
now.
this is when you can catch all the cool European vagrants that get lost like birds.
Oh, right.
Like, what are you talking about? Oh, it's birds. We should have
birds.
assumed.
Cool. That was a good question.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for joining the membership. I have a cool question from ZF. They say, Ziff. Thanks, Ziff. I'm really interested in licorice gouramis, but I'm a total beginner. However, as a thesis postgraduate, I have an interest in literature reviews, learning, and over-preparing. That being said, every beginner, no matter how well prepared they are bound to make mistakes. Is it unethical for a beginner to keep a critically endangered species like a licorice gourami as their first fish?
First fish. I think I'd go with no as well. But yeah,
Shit.
Charles, I'm gonna let you. Charles has done talks on
Yeah.
licorice gourami, so I'm gonna let you take that one.
Licorice gouramis have been kind of like a pet project of mine for the last few years. But here's the thing about licorice gourami keeping: there's so few people doing it right now that like the talk in licorice gourami groups right now is that there are a couple varieties of licorice gouramis that we cannot collect in the wild anymore, and one of them we're already like the talk is amongst the like 5 people breeding them in the world that they're like, yeah, they're already showing inbreeding depression. We're not going to be able to maintain this. And so I think that the trick here is not to be how would I say this? Not to be overwhelmed by the challenge, but to be like this is a overcomeable.
It's a call to action.
This is a
not
solvable problem
Yeah.
because there's many people in the world, like the Paris Fermentis Project. There are a lot of people breeding them. Like, not a lot, but you can find them. And if you don't want to work with wild-caught ones, there are tank-bred ones that you can find and work with and just continue the bloodlines that we already have. Like, you don't have to go hard bore, figure out how to work with a wild-caught fish if you don't want to. You can just...
You don't have to be the one to take one of the last 6 that exist.
Yes. And, like, honestly, like, if you're going to, like, pop in and pick any species and you're like, let's see how it works, the linky eyes are pretty hardy. They actually come from much more... the filamentosas, they come from, like, different pH environments. And then the Nasiais are actually kind of weird because they're one of the few that seem to be able to outcompete other licorice Grammies. That would be true, too. Yeah.
I also think, like, I feel like licorice Grammies were one of, like, when I was first getting, like, it had fish tanks before, but, like, they came along pretty adjacent to, like, when I got serious about them, and I'd started keeping them, and I don't know, I was doing it, and I was a well-read high schooler, but I was a well-read high schooler, and I mean, I got eggs. I never successfully raised the fry, but I got pretty close, and I got with Angiensis, which is not the easiest species. It's not the hardest species, but I mean, any of them would be worthwhile. And even if you, like, from a community aspect, and like the people who live around in, like, Southeast Asia where these fish are collected, honestly, that the purchasing of licorice Grammies in its own is, like, kind of a step towards conservation there, because you're providing some money towards those communities that are otherwise going to lose it to, like, these large logging firms and palm oil plantations, because they're not getting paid for those. So to some extent, just by, even if you purchase them and you fail miserably and you kill them, which I don't think you'll do, you're still taking a step towards their conservation.
You still told everyone in the supply chain that you were interested in them existing.
Exactly. Yep.
They did name a species. This was Paris Fermentis bintan.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
the Bintens. We've had those.
Is
They're
that
really
one that
cool.
you think is on the side of...
It's not the easiest, but it's no, like, let's say that the easiest is a 1 and the hardest is a 10. It's a 4. It's like,
Here's something, though, that I want to make sure we emphasize when it comes to quote-unquote easiness
Yeah.
with licorice Grammies. The easiness is all about getting the pH and hardness at the right level. The description that this person gave was extra levels of preparedness. So if your extra levels of preparedness include getting yourself some good, soft and tannin-stained water, and you're going to do that, go for it and try it
Yeah.
with the species you want to do.
You can't prepare past a pile of leaves and a couple gallons of RO water. Like, it is
Yeah.
simple.
yeah, I was going to say, I recently listened to our freshwater chemistry episode that you guys did.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tease you a little bit. I loved your, like, character development from when we did the Blackwater episode.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that changed is you got in some Betamacrostoma between then, and you're like, oh, RO isn't so bad. It's like, it's
Yeah.
fine. You just
I
have
think
to do
this
it.
is a fish that we talked about this in that episode, right? Take a 5-gallon tank, put 3 inches of Oakleys in the bottom of it, fill it up with RO water,
And you're there.
and put the fish in.
Yeah. When I was doing, like, I got some seriously low pH, lower than, like, most, like, what would be, like, conventionally considered easy to do. And I put, like, no work into getting it low. The
Yeah.
hard part for me was keeping my pair fat enough to want to raise and then feeding the really tiny fry. And that's
Yeah.
the part I really struggled with.
Yeah.
The chemistry part was the easy part. But, like, I consider, like, I spawned them. I didn't get full baby, and that's better than a lot of people do.
That's
And
huge.
So just try it. It's worthwhile. I went into it expecting it to be way more difficult than it was, and I expected to fail, and I got them to spawn. They spawned. My pair spawned about 7 times, and then they stopped spawning entirely. I kind of think they aged out, but
Short-lived? Are they short-lived species? Or?
I was trying for about 2 years. They'd spawn like
And
once
they
every
always
couple
come at least a year old. Like, they come as adults.
So-
So,
Yeah.
My my gut reaction here is if you're asking these questions and you're consuming like this type of content, like our Licorice Garami dedicated episodes, I feel like you're the right person for the job.
Basically.
I also kind of want to say, like, compared to a lot of hobbyists I talk to, I'm still a novice in a lot of their eyes, being with my age, and I haven't been keeping fish as long as they have.
It comes down to a lot of people. How many fry have you raised?
Yeah, and a lot of it too is like a lot of people have raised more fish than I have, or have been in the hobby as long as I've been alive. But I think I don't know if I'm that doesn't make me less prepared. And so I think if you're well read enough, you can't, and you have the knowledge of how to apply what you've read, I think you can do it.
Yeah, don't think just because we have a podcast that we're better or more experienced than you. Even if it's your first time, if you've done
we're
the
better.
research,
We have microphones.
Exactly. We're just struggling to try it too. That's what everybody's doing.
I also want to point to, if you hear a lot of older hobbyists, especially, that are saying you're not. It's not a beginner fish. You're not going to be able to have success with it. Yeah, they're wrong.
Yeah.
If you can do the literature review and you know exactly what you're looking at, I guarantee you know more about those licorice gouramis than the person who's selling you that they can't do it. That person tried 20 years ago and then failed. And
beginner fish is such a...
It's a loose term. Yeah.
I love this question.
Try.
That's great.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one more point on this question that I want to bring up that I think makes this whole process seem much easier for people when they know. And I'm going to give a question, and then I'm going to give the microphone to Calder to answer this. And
I
it's
love
a
it.
simple answer, and I think everyone at the table will immediately know why this question matters. Hey, what's the pH of pure water?
Depends. Atmosphere. Yeah. Exposed to air, 5.7, which is low enough to spawn most licorice gouramis.
There you go.
Yep.
It's the thing a lot of people forget is that water naturally wants to dissolve things. And so pure water exposed to air wants to dissolve carbon dioxide.
The pH scale implies pure water in a vacuum.
Yes.
So if you go to space, your tank will be different.
Your pH will be 7 if there's nothing else in the water.
How many people have reef tanks that they swear in the wintertime they can't keep their pH up because their windows are all closed?
Yeah.
Wait, can I do a point of contention?
Yeah.
The question was, what is the pH of pure water? 7.
7, yeah. But he said exposed to air, so
Then it's not pure water.
You're right.
Then it's not pure water. Sorry.
That's the point of the question.
Exactly.
Though, is that, everyone assumes that it stays pure. I'm like, no, the second it touches air, it's doing something.
Right. Yep.
You already have algae in your tank. Yeah, listen to that water chemistry episode though too. I think that'll push you a little farther in that direction. You need to just do it.
Just do it.
We second that.
I have a distinct memory of we had a clear RO line going past that window, and you're like, it's so stupid that it grows algae.
It's just water. Just water.
Yep.
There's some gases dissolved in there, probably some nitrogen.
I don't want to hear
The algae can fix it.
There's no such thing as just water. Yep.
All right, next we have a question from Evan D. And he asks, what is everybody's biggest rookie mistake?
Oh, man. The biggest one?
The time that I left a drip line going overnight and killed an Achilles tang that we had been working on for 2 months.
But you had been keeping fish for 10 years at that
That's
point.
the stupidest rookie mistake on the planet.
An Achilles tang?
Yeah.
Just the other day in front of an audience, I got a mouthful of salt water.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
I mean, a rookie mistake. All right, so
Yeah.
to me, defining a rookie mistake, it doesn't matter your experience level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you still making that mistake?
You should know better.
Yeah.
That's a rookie mistake. So my biggest, God, I've been doing this for so long that the amount of mistakes that I've made that have been borderline catastrophic are pretty big. So here's what it is. As I was a new retail aquarium worker, I had somebody come in who wanted to try Kalkwasser to add calcium and adjust their pH. And I had never done it. And I said to the person, I have never done it. I don't know how to do it. The back of the package says a half a teaspoon per gallon.
Oh no. Oh no.
That's a lot of calculus.
That's a half a teaspoon per gallon dissolved in your RO top-off water, not added to your display.
Oh no.
Those are the answers we're looking for,
Yes.
Ben.
So I helped him wipe out his 90-gallon reef tank.
Oh, that's
How-
painful.
okay.
Thank you for sharing.
In
you
all
are
fairness,
forgiven.
though, how are you? That's a lot of You have to know that something's wrong when you're going through like a couple canisters of calculus. Like,
Well, we didn't.
That's
Just
not
follow
what
the
happened.
instructions.
Can I reframe this question a little bit? I remember from their initial email, Evan said he kept his first tank ever was just a horrific stock list of too many things and incompatible things. I think this is more meant like, hey, when you just started, what's the dumb thing you did? So can we reframe that just slightly, like back to Ben? Go back to how far back are we going?
I bought a pair of parrot cichlids with it before I bought real Central Americans.
Oh no!
One of my first tanks was Betta Persephone and Sulawesi shrimp. Neither of them bred. It's
Right.
amazing. I wonder why.
The first fish I ever capped was a half-gallon goldfish drum bowl with 3 fantail goldfish in it.
I kept
Wow.
2 lone tiger barbs in a 10-gallon tank for like 4 years.
But that's okay.
They were lonely.
That's lonely, but that's yeah.
I can just imagine the franticness of those fish all the time.
I remember in college going to Meyer when they had aquariums. Actually, they still do.
Mm-hmm.
When they had lots of aquarium plants, and buying red crinkle and putting it in with my white gravel and my silver lyre-tail mollies
Sounds sick.
and thinking I had something.
Probably looked
Good.
so sleek for like,
3 days.
yeah, less than a week.
I want to hear examples that make everybody feel better about themselves.
I got one.
Yeah.
I went to a big box store, bought 20 neon tetras in $1 per sale, and they brought ick into a tank that this still upsets me. They brought ick into a tank that I had 10-year-old clown loaches in that I'd gotten from a friend.
Oh.
Guess what died first?
The clown.
Yeah.
I killed off all my fish once, but it was fish I was supposed to have quarantined. So that was pretty early on.
We're going to take a quick break. Maybe you should. I mean, there's enough people here that you could just keep going.
We can just ramble a little bit.
just
We could
ramble. I'll
look
be right
at
back.
some
I
of
feel like
the
I
chat
miss-
too.
I mislabeled a flame hawk the other day and called her berated me for it. Alec, come to the mic.
Wait,
Come to the
hold on.
mic. Share a story.
I was told 14-year-old me was told a 6-line wrasse was the perfect fish for a 25-gallon saltwater
Aw.
tank.
Oh no.
I guess you know what happens if you know what a 6-line wrasse behaves like. I watched him rip my shrimp's limbs off limb from limb.
I remember, this is a funny tangent, but somebody traded in an 8-line wrasse, and I wasn't like intimately familiar with them. Calder, do you remember this? And you showed me him, and he had just been dropped off, and I was like, I'm gonna assume he's an asshole, right? And you're like, he's a bigger asshole than a 6-line. And I was like, isn't it funny that the number of lines?
It's like
He's
multiplied.
literally just a larger asshole than a 6-line wrasse.
And then isn't there another lined wrasse?
Yeah, there's a 4-line wrasse who's a smaller
of an
asshole.
asshole.
Yeah. I feel like I miss a lot of the rookie mistakes because like I feel like my hobby grew up in working retail.
Yeah, me too.
So it's like oh, I watched everybody do it in front of me. So I'm like, won't do that.
Yeah, they're all just dumb mistakes. Like, I have a similar story of the first time we got an arrow crab, and I just added him to our invert tank, and I come back like 10 minutes later, and he's tearing through peppermint shrimp like Godzilla, like lifting them up, ripping them in half, and then just shooting on them.
Oh no.
That was traumatic.
Wait, there are a few questions in the chat. Now's a good time to answer those.
But I have a
You have a funny
system
story?
well,
Is it funny?
it's sad and funny.
Okay, go ahead.
I
This is a safe
crashed
space.
an entire system with by adding a singular sea hare that inked.
That did what?
Inked. They have ink, and it crashed the tank. The entire, like a 300-gallon system worth of livestock.
You don't know because we don't carry them.
Yeah, it was already a mistake by getting a sea hare, and then I put it in that retail system, and it inked, and it crashed the system.
You put a sea hare in a retail system?
Yes. Not here, but
Oh, I know that.
Because we didn't get a dang sea hare
No.
here.
because I would have been fired if I did that here.
Hey, William, thanks for joining.
Yeah, good
Hey,
to
William,
see
how you doing? Good to see you.
We have enough questions submitted that I hate to roll over the questions in the chat, but we should get back to it.
Okay.
But if we get the little free time, we will go back and address some questions in the chat. Are we ready to jump back in?
Let's do it.
Nick W. asks, he would love to hear our thoughts on a display refugium. He's currently planning to upgrade his reef tank and working through the design. I have several mangroves that I have rooted in saltwater, but don't want them in the tank. Long story short, I ended up on the idea of plumbing a second tank in line with my reef to grow the mangroves and macroalgae. How would you go about doing this, and what are your stocking recommendations? I'm thinking in the range of 60 breeder for the reef and 20 long for the refugium.
Cool.
Sounds awesome, by the
Yeah,
way.
you
Yeah.
need more light than you think you do for your mangroves.
Yes.
Don't listen to anybody who's in the hobby, aside maybe Julian Sprunk, who's talking about care of mangroves, because
Yes.
they're wrong. Buy a dedicated grow light for like commercial tree growth. That'll make it way easier for you.
Yep.
Otherwise, just make it like a reef tank.
The other thing to remember with mangroves is, as part of your refugium, they are not functional.
No.
They look cool. You should still do it. Things that are exporting nutrients in a refugium are things that grow fast. Mangroves do not grow fast. The reason mangroves don't grow in saltwater the reason mangroves don't grow in freshwater naturally is because they get outcompeted by everything that grows so much faster than they do. They grow in saltwater because they grow very, very slowly, and there's nothing to compete with them. So they are not, yes, they are exporting a few nutrients. They are exporting a negligible amount of nutrients. They are not a functional part of your refugium. The macroalgae is going to rock it out.
Yeah. If you give them the amount of light they do need, it is kind of shocking how fast they can put on growth. But they're still not going to. You're right.
Tropical high noon sunlight is
Yeah.
what mangroves need to grow properly. So light the hell out of them.
I mean, thankfully, terrestrial plant grow lights are comparatively
Yeah.
inexpensive.
Spider Farmer makes a really great cheap LED that's
Okay.
pretty light efficient. When I was growing mangroves, that's what I was using.
Yeah.
They grew real.
Yeah, get some macros in there.
Yeah.
Gracilaria and Cato seem to be the good, standard,
Yeah.
easy, not going to randomly do something weird and all die off macros.
Right.
There's a ton of other cool macros like Hypnea that also requires a lot of light, but those macroalgae are kind of boom and bust, so they're going to grow for really well for a while.
Right.
But you want to make sure you're cutting them up and fragging them and spreading them around because they
Mhm.
will, as a colony, all melt at once. And that's just their biology is just what they do.
Clerpas will do that too, but it's more concerning because they grow faster, so more of them are dying at
Yeah.
once.
Avoid a lot of the weedy caulerpas like Caulerpa bractopus, subciliata, prolifera, taxifolia, rasmosa. There are some really cool ones like Caulerpa cuprassoides and palmoides. And
See, I wouldn't avoid Rasmosa and Prolifera. I would just harvest them more
Yeah,
frequently.
actually,
exactly.
no, that works
You
great,
just don't
yeah.
want them to like really set in and
Yeah.
become a huge thing
Yeah.
and then all die off at once. But
The-
if you're trimming them, they're fine.
Yeah, if your idea is a refugium and that's
Yeah.
to export nutrients, get the weedy ones. Get the
Yeah.
ones that grow really, really fast because they're going to export so many nutrients in a short amount of time, which Rasmosa and Prolifera are going to do really well. And Taxifolia are going to do really, really,
really well. Maybe avoid taxifolia because it's probably going to be outlawed here in the States soon. But but everybody else,
Yeah, if
do
you're
it.
in a coastal state, don't get Taxifolia.
yeah,
If
but
you're in Michigan, just get it. It's
just
fine.
get it if it's around. Yeah,
Ready to move on?
Mexicana.
As far as stocking, I'd put like 30 sexy shrimp in that.
yeah.
Yeah, put something you can't put in your display, either something too small or too predatory.
Or
Arrow crab.
if you
Sure.
want, you want another pair of clowns, is another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something you
Exclusive
can't
clones.
have two of.
Yeah, bonus clowns is always my favorite thing to do with refugiums.
I mean, it's
Up-
a great little mantis shrimp setup.
Oh, there you go.
Ooh.
That's fun. Or pile of cleaner gobies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the green banded gobies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're naturally in like rocky shore areas.
Mhm.
They would be right at home in something like that.
Yep.
I miss those.
Those were cool.
They're
Such a great
hard to
fish.
get our hands on.
Yeah.
The
Uh,
captive breeders have them.
They do. We'll find them again.
Ready to move on?
Yep.
Yeah.
This question initially scares me,
Excellent.
but also makes me kind of curious. So Max asks, I use glass tops for all of my rimmed aquariums exclusively, but they get dirty from condensation and evaporation and algae growth, and they're a pain to clean. Car detailers use a 2-part ceramic coating to make glass extremely hydrophobic. Once it cures, it's very hard and durable. Would I be crazy for wanting to try this on my tank lids?
I would say I do not believe I'm qualified to answer that question.
Yeah.
If there's any kind of something in that coating that is some kind of a biocide,
Any sides, just to
any
avoid-
sides, yeah, like the silicone GE1 and GE2 silicone, right? GE2 has a fungicide in it; it will wipe your tank out.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it's GE1 or GE2. I always get those mixed up.
GE2, I think.
Okay, I think. Check
Yeah,
before you use.
please do.
Yes, I am not qualified to answer that question.
Good question.
Find out from the manufacturer how it works, but I don't know.
If you can get us a list of every ingredient that's in that product, maybe we could go through it and be able to help you. But otherwise, we'd never recommend anything.
Yeah.
My other thought, though, too, is if you get water on top of this ceramic coating, it is
yeah.
still going to leave marks. Also, I think more of the key there is like coming up with like a steady maintenance routine for it. Like
Yeah.
if you have a fish room, just know when you need to do your lids.
Clean
and
your
use
tanks
vinegar.
more often.
Yeah, and use
Yeah.
vinegar. It makes it so much faster. Vinegar and hot water.
Yeah.
Do a dust once a week and then go through and do a full lid clean once a month. Give it
Yeah.
a rinse, give it a scrape down, do a little bit of vinegar.
So I honestly never bothered with vinegar in my fish room. I just used a razor blade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that works
fair
great.
enough.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Put it
Yeah.
under hot water and take a razor blade, scrape the hard water
yeah,
stains right
it's
off
like
of it.
a little more likely you'll get a little nick, but
Yeah.
really you shouldn't need to the way you have to scrape a lid.
I also think there's value too in pulling that lid off every month because you're gonna get a different perspective on how your aquarium,
True.
even if you just have one.
Yeah.
And then
True.
I think any activity like water changes, I think same thing. It's like you're getting into your tank, you're really looking around. Like I
Mhm.
think it's so easy to kind of like neglect systems, even if they're like well taken care of. You're just feeding, and you just don't notice a problem until it's a big problem.
It's
But-
amazing how much can build up under a
E-
lid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it just might be good practice in general. And then also some of those like ceramic coatings and stuff have like PFOAs and a lot of these like
Right.
super toxic compounds. And maybe I don't want it to be even remotely soluble. I maybe wouldn't want those to be remotely soluble indoors in my house. So that'd just be the other
Yeah.
concern there.
The odds that it's just ceramic are pretty much
Yeah.
zero.
Next, we have a question from Gunnar T.
Oh, he just joined, so good.
Welcome.
Cool.
Welcome.
I think I've seen him on the listener page a couple times.
Yeah, I think you're
Cool.
right.
I think he's chimed in on occasion.
Welcome.
So Gunnar asks, do you think it's unethical to set up a tank that is stocked with larger predatory fish and smaller schooling fish to simulate their natural predatory behavior?
Oh, is that the one who wanted to do the Sailfin Molly Heterandria combo?
No. So the
'Cause
example
I
he
remember
points
hearing that
to,
name recently.
No, the example he pointed to was one or a pair of larger South American cichlids and a large school of neon or rummy nose tetras or something similar.
Neon and rummy nose tetras are the worst examples for this because they're not going to breed.
Well, I don't know if and he goes on to say anybody who does this would have to understand that they would need to be restocking. The example that comes to mind is discus or angelfish and cardinals.
Yeah.
And I think that's a awesome setup. Do you think it's unethical to do that setup where, say, pair discus, 40 rummy nose or 40 cardinals, and you get to see that discus do what he does and pick off some of the tetras?
I think I have to go with I don't think it's unethical.
So I think it's a big asterisks on what the predator is and what the prey
For
item is.
sure.
Because like for discus and cardinal tetras, the discus isn't going to go out and hunt all of the cardinal tetras out of the tank immediately.
Right.
And we also know that the cardinal tetras have a really sustainable supply chain. Like,
Right.
I guess it's the best and worst example
Yeah.
of this.
whereas
Did Gunnar say what fish he wanted to use?
He didn't. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
He just said large South American cichlids as an example.
Okay, so I have a real world attempt that I know someone who tried it, and it was a 125, and he put in 80 guppies in the 125, and left them there for a month, and then added a Southeast Asian needlefish. All of the guppies were gone in 2 months.
Southeast Asian football fish?
Needlefish.
Football shaped by the time
Yeah.
you ate
Oh,
it.
yeah. That was a happy fish. So I do not believe there is an aquarium predator, a realistic, practical predator-prey relationship that can be maintained in an aquarium.
so
There are some caveats he added to his
Okay.
his inquiry, and here I have him here. This would be aquascaped, trying to mimic a natural environment with lots of stones, plants, driftwood, where there are multiple places that are too shallow or inaccessible for the larger cichlids to get to, creating safety zones for the schools to escape to. I'm inclined to think that if that's the only place they're safe, that's the only place they're going to
Yeah.
exist.
Right.
Or end scenario where if they can get them, they're clearing them all.
Yeah.
They're overeating to the point of
I have seen some successful guppy colonies in big fish tanks
Yeah.
where the fish are big enough that the guppies aren't really that exciting to them, but they'll
Mhm.
pick off ones.
They'll get the babies.
Even I'm thinking about like where we had a Bashir in a tank that was full of hornwort, and that
Yeah.
like we didn't even mean for the guppies to be in there. They were just breeding in there, and maybe he was picking off some, but he wasn't like a determined hunter to pick off all of them. And to me, that's a different scenario than, well, I'm keeping them with this fish I can't breed, and I'm just going to replace them every 3 months.
So I kind of think we do achieve this to some extent with the advice we give people with bettas and shrimp, where we recommend them start a colony of shrimp and then they add
Yeah.
a betta, because realistically, how many shrimp can that one betta kill? And generally, it works.
Yeah, it works really well.
but sometimes
but
if
some-
it's planted well enough,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the betta isn't a psychopath.
Yeah, we have like I can even think of like we have retail customers who have really established shrimp colonies in their larger size planted tanks, like 75 gallons plus, and they have pairs of angels in there, and
Mhm.
there's so many shrimp that like even if that angel went on like a tirade and was like I'm gonna kill all of them, they would get so bored by trying to kill them all that they just stop, and then the shrimp would immediately repopulate.
Well, and the example he just chimed in with was an Oscar. And they're not even a good fish predator at all, so you
No.
could probably pull that off.
true.
No, they're good enough. I don't think you could with Oscars. I
If
think they'd take them out.
if there was dense floating plants and a fish that reproduced readily, I feel like you could.
I think I would take the betting side of it wouldn't be sustainable.
I wouldn't put
I'm
anything
not
in
saying
there
it
you
wouldn't
weren't
work.
willing
I'm
to
saying
lose.
I would take
Yeah.
a bet that I would bet if somebody made me choose, I'm going to put my money on the Oscar taking out the other fish completely.
Yeah,
But this is one of those questions where every fish is an individual. You never
Yeah.
know what you're going to
So-
get.
You know what? I'm gonna take that even one step further. I'm gonna double down on that. Back in the day when I was in college,
Oh, no.
before I knew better, and I was feeding goldfish to my Oscars,
Yeah.
I watched my Oscars. I had 2 Oscars in a tank, and I'd put in a dozen goldfish, and they were not. The Oscars could barely fit 3 goldfish in their mouth, and they would try and fit 7. And then, well, they had 2 tails sticking out of their mouth. They would go try and eat another goldfish. So I'm gonna say
But I
If
also know
Oscars
lots
are
of
your choice-
goldfish that grew up to near full size in an Oscar tank.
in an Oscar tank.
Oh,
Just-
yeah.
that amazes me. So
So
Within the last week, somebody had a rosy minnows growing up in their Oscar tank.
yeah.
wow.
So my alternative would be get like say we're doing a larger South American
Mhm.
cichlid. So get another South American cichlid that's smaller, as adult size is not food. but produces babies.
Yeah.
At a readily,
Okay,
right?
sure.
Like I had
Like one big Oscar and a pair of maybe not convicts, but something a step down
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
aggression.
I had a 125 when I was in high school with a big pair of Vieja Regani, which I think is now Myochromis Regani, but and I had convicts in there, and the convicts were breeding, but I would never get adults because by the time the babies bred and then left the nest, the Regans were like, "Oh, snack," and
Right.
ate them.
Yeah.
And that's a similar scenario to like this because you get another smaller prey item. Those cichlids can still be predators,
Right.
but like you're not.
Okay, so you know what? I realized we just we circumvented the question.
Yeah.
The question was not about could it work. The question was about the ethics of it.
Yes.
Ooh.
Fish eat fish.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. If I'm going to feed frozen silver sides and be fine with it, I should be fine with feeding live fish to other fish. I hope this point has come across like really powerfully with this group, with this organization, that I am not anti-piscivores.
Yeah.
I am anti-commercially raised feeder fish. And really we are really anti-goldfish as feeder fish.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Fish that eat other fish are fish doing what fish do.
To some extent, I'm actually kind of anti like commercially raised fish as feeder options. Like
I can see that.
I don't think
Yep,
it's
I can see
super
that.
ethical to like even like say like we're getting Harlequin reservoirs is like instead of cardinal tetras, we're swapping that out in this scenario.
Mhm.
I don't think that's nearly as ethical because I think the effort that it takes to produce those fish in that supply chain means that the carbon impact, the impact like the entire supply it outweighs the potential benefit to fish. Cardinal tetras with their short supply chain, that money's still going to the hands of people, indigenous people in Brazil. Like that's
Not to mention they're functionally annual in the wild,
Yeah.
so whatever we're
Oh,
taking
yeah. Go
isn't really pulling out of wild population.
that's absolutely ethical.
This
Like,
is a bigger question than is it ethical to see some fish get eaten?
and
Right.
I,
Right.
yeah, I'd
Right.
say
It's so complicated.
question.
It
Yeah.
specifically depends on what fish it is.
Yeah.
I agree.
I would
If
If
you want to
you-
workshop that concept, we're all ears. You can
Yeah.
email
Yeah.
us and we can chat
Yeah.
through that.
If you are raising your own feeder fish, other than goldfish, well, I
at
guess if you're raising goldfish for fish that are native to Southeast Asia and have the anti whatever it is to thiamase, like because they must, right?
Yeah.
The whatever barbs produce, the thiamase that barbs produce, the predators in Southeast Asia must have some kind of anti-thiamase, right?
I'm
But if you are raising your own feeder fish, feed them.
Yeah. If you've got a 500-gallon tank and you want to put a clown knife in there, feed your clown knife goldfish that you raise. I think I'm okay with it.
Sure.
Yeah,
I might think you're nuts.
Other than clown knife shouldn't be in the hobby at all.
Right.
Go catch one out of Florida and do it.
This
Yeah.
is a great segue into a question. Charles, you have one more point?
I am completely going off track here. William just gifted 5 memberships, so
Thank
He's
you,
done that
William.
before.
You rock, man.
Good
Thank you
guy.
so much.
it has to be pointed out.
Hey, cheers
Good
to
guy.
William. Thank you,
Shout out to
William.
William.
And I mean, we should be gifting you memberships after you bailed us out last week. So,
I know.
cheers.
He did half the podcast for us last week, and now he's gifting.
Thanks, William.
This is a really
I'm
that's
not sure how much of that ended up in the recorded version, but it was pretty good.
Yeah.
he got credit.
Good.
He got
Good.
credit in the recorded version. Don't
Good.
It was
worry.
a whole thing.
Feeder fish. Great segue into another question that I think is a pretty easy question to answer if we can kind of break down where thiamese comes from and why. So Jacob B asks that we discuss the dangers of thiamese consumption regularly on our podcast. It's clear that we should not feed our fish a regular diet of feeder goldfish, or at all, is what I'll say. He's interested in starting a long-term breeding colony with cyprinids, specifically cherry barbs or white cloud mountain minnows. It's likely that in time I'll need to call or remove some fish from the colony. The easiest route is to feed them to my Oscar. However, I'm curious about how he would process the amount of thiamese over extended period of time. Does it build up in a fish's system and never leave? Is it processed over time?
Yeah,
That
and
is an
in-
excellent question.
In
It is.
small amounts, will it harm the fish?
In small amounts, no. So thymidase is an enzyme, and enzymes as a whole, enzymes as a whole are pretty reactive. Like fish have to constantly be making them in order to maintain, like any enzyme in your body, you have to constantly make to maintain a certain level of it in your body, like constantly. And so, wow, I completely lost my train of thought there.
We kind of sidetracked there.
You gotta constantly make thiamase.
Yeah, you're constantly making thiaminase. And so it's one of those things that, like, sorry, I'm connecting dots. I'm trying to make this concise because I don't want to meander here. So the fish itself, if your wording of the question made me think that you're like, is there a way that I can like goose the diet of these fish so they're making less of it? No.
Right.
No, if they're healthy, they're making it. Like the answer is, yeah, you don't really want to be doing that though. So I'm going to sidestep that and say no. You can feed it in small doses. You also want to make sure that your Oscar is getting other things in its diet that are high in vitamin B1 to counteract that. And you want to limit how much the exposure is. So what I would look into is, I don't know the name of the paper off the top of my head, but there are a lot of studies in North Atlantic salmon populations that are eating a lot of herring, which are also high in thiaminase. And there's a lot of information there that like how are these fish surviving and stuff like that. Like this is an extreme version, like to the point where I'm like, don't try to replicate this, because it's like, it's kind of weird that they can make it, to be honest. But it'll give you an idea of like what a fish can take, and then you can go like reel it in from there.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're like feeding a really good diet to an Oscar and you're like, all right, I'm going to feed him a cherry barb a week, that's probably fine.
The
I think I would hypothesize, and this is just an hypothesis, and I'd really love to, I would love that there's probably some data out there to support this. Barbs are the fish that produce thiaminase. Barbs are food fish for lots of other fish. The fish in Southeast Asia, the predators in Southeast Asia, have to have something to counteract that thiaminase, right?
Yeah.
So if your predator is a Southeast Asian fish, like a Southeast Asian needlefish, and again, this is hypothesizing, I don't know this scientifically, I gotta believe they've got whatever it is to make to be okay with consuming the thiaminase.
So something too, enzymes and like protein, like are proteins. Proteins do in general get denatured to their base amino acids through like basic digestion, and it's only a really small fraction of what was originally there that's going to be affecting the fish. It's like the reason like thiaminase is such an issue in like as feeder fish is like if all we're giving a fish is consistent exposure, like say a goldfish, say your Oscar's eating like 10 goldfish a day, there's that small amount of thiaminase building up as like a baseline. Whereas like if you're feeding like your like if you have a an Oscar and you're breeding cherry barbs, you may out of your batch of 30 cherry barbs only have 4 or 5 to cull by the end that are actually going to be substantial and large enough to allow any of that thiaminase to make it through that digestive tract. Feeding those 5 or even 10 cherry barbs
Tiny
out one
babies.
time every few months, that's not an issue.
That
like
makes a lot
that's
of
a
sense.
non-issue.
Right.
Like I mean, there are thiaminases produced by a lot of organisms, including organisms the Oscars are going to be eating in the wild. Some mussels, some snails and stuff all produce thiaminase. They can handle a little bit of thiaminase. It's just consistent exposure to thiaminase is the big issue. I mean, it's in the food we feed our Oscars as well.
Yeah, we're concerned about the person who's feeding their Oscar exclusively feeder
Exactly,
goldfish.
yeah.
I love that. That's perfect.
Amazing context to keep in mind there too. But also another thing, like goldfish, they're a league in their own when it comes to thiaminase production. Like they're the preferred source of isolating thiaminase in a lab. Like
Sure.
they are also an extreme example.
Right.
We're all taking turns now.
Apparently it's potty time.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Yeah.
Nick, how much do you have left from your list? A
A
lot.
lot. A fair
Okay.
amount. I don't think we'll. I don't
We're gonna
think
make
we'll
this a
finish it.
two-part
We're
because
getting
this is.
there.
I was about
But
to
I'm
say,
having so much
I'm
fun.
having a lot of fun
This is
too.
great.
I love answering.
We're going for a while
questions.
here, but
Did you want to
We're
do some of
only
the
at
chat questions? then?
124 on the actual recording right
Okay.
now,
Yeah.
and probably like 10 minutes of break time in there. So we're doing good.
yeah.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
I got
But-
more in me.
We gotta
Yep, me too.
determine what the next 20 minutes are gonna be.
Do you
Yeah.
guys want to tackle a few out of the chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it that will we have called her out of the room.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
go back up
got-
to the top and tackle any that we haven't tackled.
Ooh, the Tang for a 65 is an easy question. It's
No.
a Tamini.
The only one.
Charles
If you
says
had
no.
to keep a Tang in a 65 for around a year or two.
No.
Not you wouldn't do it for even a year?
No.
I would say this. Why specifically is it only a year or two? Do you have the other tank already, or are you planning to upgrade?
Yeah, that's really the
Right?
question.
If you're quote unquote planning to upgrade, then you should upgrade and then get the tank.
Right.
If your buddy is gonna be gone for a year because he's in the military or whatever, and you're gonna house the fish for a year for him in your 65 until they come back or whatever, or a scenario like not the plan is already in place, but the scenario is already
The
happening.
tank exists.
The tank exists.
and it will happen.
Yes. The amount of people, I'll upgrade someday. Yes, screw that.
We hear
That's
that a
not
lot.
the attitude we want to hear, right? The attitude needs to be, here is my plan for the long-term care of this fish. I have the next tank. I don't have the room for it, or something, right?
That being said, I think a captive bred or a larval rear might be better off in a small tank for a year or two.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
I also don't disagree with that, but
But that really needed to be said.
Yes, I agree.
There's a question that I think I can tackle.
Yeah.
Drew asks best aquatic plants for growing out of the top of a tank. I've
do you have cats? That's my first question.
True. I've compiled a list though. I think just about every Ludwigia that I've practiced
Oh.
with can.
Depends on how tall your tank is, though. Sometimes they don't want to grow that high.
True. I guess this is a scenario where you could potentially get them in maybe like one of those back hanging plant
Mm.
cups.
Mhm.
Those are ones that grow really well from submersed to immersed. Your Bacopas can and will. Again, I think if they can reach high enough, yes. But if you give them up by the surface, they will.
Yeah.
My favorite lately has been like the hydrocotyle species that we play with.
Yeah.
Any of them, they're
Yep.
the best ones.
Yep, Tripartita does it
Really, it's
super
almost
well.
easier to say what doesn't do well growing out of a tank, you know?
Yeah, and I've played with
Cardinal plant, that's a sweet one to do that looks
Yeah.
so different.
I've played with a lot of plants, and the factor is going to be kind of the ambient temperature of your room and like kind of the humidity.
Yeah,
And a lot of these
if
need a
we
little coverage.
struggle with some of them in our humidity in our store, then they need to be sprayed 2 or 3 times a day if you're
Yeah.
even going to try.
Yeah.
My favorite right now is the Echinodoros we have growing out of the front tank. I think it's a Kleiner bar sword.
I don't know which one
Oh,
it is.
that's- it's a sword. What is you
I
think?
don't know how
that's
you
a
didn't
Kleiner?
recognize it immediately from that perfect flower
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
cluster.
that's a Kleiner bars. You think it
I-
feels like a bigger sword.
Oh no, maybe it's not. I think I put a sparkles. I put it in.
feels
there.
Yeah,
like-
it
it
was,
feels
like
or
a
maybe it was an
spark-
Atlansberg.
It might be Natlansberg. But either way, I love
Big swords, just
I
any
love
of them.
growing swords out of the back of tanks. They look
Any big
awesome.
Anubias.
They put
Hostafolia
flowers.
is great because it's got the long stems and short leaves.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need some help in that transitional period, but
Yeah.
a lot of these can once you get them over that hump. You just have to be pretty vigilant in keeping them kind of moist and stuff during that transition period, and then they generally are pretty good after that
Ooh.
point.
A lot of the hygrophillas are nice
We got
too.
Persicarias as a
Oh,
deep cut from the
yeah.
chat. That is a good choice.
Yeah.
Is that
Persicarias are awesome.
Coriambrosa growing out the front tank?
That's
Yeah.
Hygrophila, yeah.
Yeah, Hygrophila cormosa. Yeah.
And that one looks
That one's like
awesome.
a tree.
It's like a
So
jungle.
I always think it's important to note most of the plants we have growing in the aquarium trade are terrestrial plants or emergent wetland plants that tolerate seasonal flooding so they can grow underwater.
Are you going to tell me that the term riparian is incorrect now? Is that a fine term to use?
That's a fine term. Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
I thought this was going to be like a Rio fight, epiphyte debate that
No,
you were gonna,
no, you're
gonna
good.
Stop me.
I'll keep you safe. Don't
Okay,
worry.
thanks, buddy. Don't make me look stupid in front of my friends.
I won't. I got you.
fully, truly aquatic plants.
I think only
Nias grass, hornwort.
Nias grass, hornwort, all the lilies, all the nymphea.
By the way, that's
True.
the second picture
Those are
I
all true
posted so far
aquatics.
during the podcast. So trying to
Some of the Pontomergitans,
Yeah.
Marimo moss balls.
Yeah.
Wow, shots fired. What are the
Mm.
actual limiting factors that keep the saltwater gang from aquascaping their tanks to the same level as freshwater layouts?
We don't know.
Because they're little bitches.
No, I got this one.
You just did this talk.
I feel like the saltwater
Beer.
hobby's 20 years behind the freshwater hobby. Is that why?
I think that's part of it. I think there's a couple of things going on here. One of them is so many saltwater aquarium hobbyists are so dedicated to the fruit stand effect,
Yeah.
right? The fruit stand effect.
one of these and one
I
of
want
those.
one of
and
these, one of these,
those.
one of these, one of these, one of these, one of these. And I remember
That
doing
last
that when I
one
was 12 years old as well. Ooh,
The last
shots fired.
We don't talk about Fight Club.
Oh, I couldn't hide my reaction to that.
I think another thing going on is plants are $3.99 to $5.99, and corals are $19.99 to $399.99. Right? So the experimenting is more challenging with saltwater.
Yeah, I don't care if I kill a plant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, corals make rock. You can't trim. It's harder to trim
Yeah,
rock.
that's
Yeah.
fair. You kind of have to once you put them in place, once they
They
cement,
they make the aquascape.
all you can do is maybe trim.
Yep.
This is my aquascape now.
So I think that's what's going on, and I don't see a solution. I think that some reefers could make some aquascapes that get close to. I'm not going to say the beauty because there's some gorgeous reef tanks out there. But-
And the intricacy is
Yeah.
really the thing that sets freshwater apart, is the
Yeah.
level of minute detail.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that my genuine take on this is I do think it's entirely possible to make saltwater aquascapes, but someone as innovative as Takashi Amano hasn't come along in saltwater, and those people need to be experimenting more.
Yeah. It's not even just about the innovativeness, it's about, like, yeah, or like the drive for people to follow them. Like, that just deep impact.
I will say there is kind of this like nerdy subculture in reefing right now with like heavily aquascaped like Dutch style macroalgae tanks
Mm.
or like
It
like-
gets there, but it's not really it.
I don't know.
Mhm.
There's a few people like Tiger Boy H2O on Instagram. His name's Dennis. He's got written like a few articles for like Reef Doc for some of the like reef groups, but and then they get really close to these like really heavily intricate aquascapes. Another one would be like I forgot Courtney's last name, but he's in the UK and he also has some really heavily aquascaped saltwater tanks. And I think those though they've got that like because macroalgae are a little bit more plastic and forgiving than coral. They're faster
Yeah.
growing. They're cheaper. You can do those you can innovate.
The
more.
macroalgae people are doing it.
Yeah.
Honestly, Calder, your 2-gallon scape has pushed me closer to feeling like that's possible than anything else because it has the sense of scale right.
Thank you.
You
And
know
I
what's-
think that's what the freshwater people get right, where they can do that complexity, is they scale everything down and they only choose the tiniest things.
Yeah.
And, like, to me, no matter what you do with rock work, you're not going to get that sense of
Yeah.
scale.
And the key I think to that tank and the scale that it has is that it's not like freshwater aquariums, at least right now, are really into the like building with hardscape. And like with that tank, there's a little pile of rubble rock, and then I let all the corals go, and I
Mm.
just picked corals that fit the size of the tank and the
Mhm.
size of the inhabitants I put in there.
I feel like that's the trajectory it needs to
Yeah.
go.
Mhm.
Not just let's create more elaborate arches out of cement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think right now how saltwater aquariums have to be set up and how they function really fits though with like modern styles of aquascaping.
Mhm.
Like if we were getting here and trying to apply like the older nature aquarium styles like Takashi Amano to marine aquariums, I think we could get there. But I think like these modern aquascapes where the tanks are really ephemeral and set up for short periods, I think it'd be really hard to achieve that kind of like look in a saltwater tank because you're just not. It's going to take more time.
Like a well-planned softy-scape gets the closest to me to a nature-style aquarium, where like it forms the lines kind of in a way that feels natural, and you can sort of get that balance right, and you can trim well without it just looking weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think one of the drawbacks is I'm going to call out Tiger Boy. One of the things that really blew my mind and started making me rethinking like hardscape and saltwater tanks is that we're so used to using purple or like white rocks, but he predominantly uses like black lava stone, and that opens
That's
up.
what Jonathan does too.
So many avenues of things you can do.
Yeah. One of the catalysts for nature aquariums and for freshwater aquascaping, Takashi Amano's catalyst for all of this was imitating some kind of a nature scene with a Planet Aquarium. Nature scenes are green.
Yeah.
Right? Beautiful nature scenes are green.
And beautiful reef scenes can't be replicated.
Exactly. You can't imitate this beautiful photograph of a natural scene in the world and try to make something that looks like that in an aquarium that can make a beautiful freshwater aquascape.
Yeah.
You can't do that with coral.
That's where I think the scale comes into play, because you might not be able to recreate the scale of an amazing, let's say, Montipora plate layering over each other, but you might be able to select one of the plating coralline algae, and if your tank is only 6 inches tall, that half-inch plate gets that impression.
So that's actually kind of some of the thought to that little tiny tank. Is I have some mushroom corallomorphs in there, and the idea behind them isn't so much that they're corallomorphs themselves; they look like mini carpet anemones.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but I also wonder too if saltwater's kind of lost its way a little bit when it comes to like natural aquascaping, when it comes to how blue our aquariums have gotten and how the focus has been on coral color and variety in coral for so long that like
and coral specimens
that we've kind of lost that ability to chase that natural look. Because like I've got I think a pretty great little reef tank rolling right now under a twin star, and it looks much more natural. And I mean, there's nothing special in that aquarium, like just some finger leathers and a big toadstool, and some GSP, and that's all that's in there. But I think we've kind of like at this point, like the current reef hobby has moved so far away from that, like, oh yeah, we want to make the aquarium look like the ocean. And I'm not saying like as a retail store, we definitely set up tanks that are designed to look like oceans. But like I'm saying, like dedicated coral hobbyists kind of I think have lost their way to some extent in that. And they've
one of these and one of these and one of these.
There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's
that looks so colorful it must be fake.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
wow, that looks amazing. It almost looks fake.
Yeah. And
no one ever says that about a beautifully aquascaped freshwater aquarium.
Yeah. And like I don't think that there's anything intrinsically wrong with.
They say it looks so beautiful, it looks real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe that might be a core.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with like chasing those like coral color and that structure and that cool. That's cool, but it's a hobby in itself, and I kind of feel like amongst hobbyist circles that's become so dominant that it's kind of like overshadowing maybe these like simpler like back to roots like just leather corals and a.
You're not going to achieve those elements of design, right? Contrast and balance and color theory. That
even like
work.
flow, you know?
Yeah. And ratio.
This is Helen says, as an aquascaper who has not long ago set up a nano reef, it's def harder without plants. The rocks are awesome to work with, but corals take so much longer to grow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give my counterpoint, and this is like genuine. No, it's a different thought process. Like we have so many schools of thoughts on how to do a Planet Aquarium scape. There's no Indonesian style reef aquascape. You know what I mean? Like we don't have paradigms.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that that's what I mean by innovators. Like we don't have anyone establishing like ways to think about how to do a reef aquascape.
And my postulation is that we don't have innovators because we can't. Not Okay, but we haven't yet. So maybe I'd say we can't yet.
I mean, how long
Yeah.
was realistically, right? I don't think we've been able to grow corals and like reef tanks as well. Until the mid '90s is when we really were able to pull off these tanks well.
Oh yeah.
So we're only 30 years into this, whereas like
The Dutch style planted aquarium started in the 60s.
yeah,
That's
so like
awesome.
we're not that. We're still really relatively early on into this. I do have a kind of hot take in that we should stop doing these negative space aquascapes in reef keeping because they look stupid. And they all
What's the flowing? What's that style?
Yeah.
that's fine, but like these like elaborate structures made out of cyanoacrylite, sand, and rock that have a ton of spots where you can put individual coral frags but not enough room for those frags to grow into colonies.
Right.
And there's not any spot for your fish to go and hide, and
Yeah.
they're just stressful.
If
and-
you're going to do that, put 10 of the same kind of colony.
yeah, and that's going to be cool when it
Yes.
grows out. But like,
Not one of these, not fruit stand. Don't fruit
yeah,
stand it.
I can't take it anymore.
Can I get us back on track to
Yeah.
submit
Yes.
We
questions?
probably have
Yes.
time for like one or two.
Yeah. We're going to do 2 more listener questions.
Okay, I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
But that was all off of a comment in the chat.
Yeah.
I was
Took off
expecting it to
running.
be a quick one.
Not a chance.
Well, this just means we'll be doing a part 2.
Absolutely.
We haven't decided when. Next few weeks, couple weeks, probably we'll squeeze it back in.
Sure, maybe next week. I don't
Next
know.
week.
next week. We don't have anything planned for next week, so we could just say next week here, and then all these people will show up next week.
It's up to the host.
Next week it is.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds
Um,
good.
On your 2-gallon scape, though,
Yeah.
just doubling back quickly, that is an awesome example for people who are scared of small reef tanks. Somebody asked Amy and I today, I thought saltwater tanks had to be big.
Yeah.
Why?
And then we said, no, it doesn't. Look how easy it can be. And they said, oh, how much does this cost? I'm like, what?
$5,000.
A year ago, it cost a lot less.
yeah, it's grown in. It's had some time.
But it's pretty much $20 to $40 for each inch or two of coral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that tank's had that tank. I set that tank up March of last year, so it's
Yeah.
had since March to grow in. So we're almost at 10 months.
But it's basically like a nano rimless saltwater tank with no budget because you're just chucking stuff in.
Yeah,
there.
I cut a frag off of something and I throw it in there, and it's that overgrew that rack. So chop it in.
All right, we ready to jump back in?
Yep, let's do it.
Mhm.
Cool. Next, I have a question here from Lloyd, and Lloyd asks, "I'm an old school marine keeper who still has much more interest in fish than corals. I'd like to hear the discussion, pros and cons of a fish-only marine tank without live rock."
Oh, you've been harping on this for a while.
Bring it back.
No.
No.
No. Okay. Sorry. We have corals in there, have soft corals, but
That wasn't the.
you're right. Okay.
It was live rock.
You're right.
Fowler.
It's No.
Foul.
I think we've kind of scared away a lot of people by Fowlers work great.
Yeah.
How often does a Fowler stay a Fowler? Like even like the OG Fowler tanks would eventually end up with corals in them. I think people need to start setting up Fowler tanks if they're afraid that they're coral to keep fish that might eat coral, because eventually they're gonna want to put coral in there,
Right.
and then they're gonna be less afraid. Because we're kind of losing some of these species, like they're just not in demand anymore.
Yeah.
True.
And they fit well, and they're good aquarium fish. It's just people are like, well, I want coral in there, and everybody,
and really, I want hammers in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody everywhere is saying, well, those will eat coral, and so we're just not importing them anymore.
Right.
They're not showing up in aquariums, and we're kind of losing these fish, and it sucks.
So we're actually doing this in the shop right now.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
My all-time favorite group of fish are the big saltwater angelfish. To me, I would argue this: there is no more beautiful group of fish than large angels. Homocanthus and Pobocanthus angelfish. Nothing can compete with the majesty of those fish. And when we use the term reef safe, it is a broad stroke.
yeah,
When we use the term it eats coral, That's like saying it eats plants.
Yeah.
Well, we eat broccoli, but we don't eat oak leaves. Right?
Calder probably
Speak for
does.
yourself.
Just acorns, okay?
But not the leaves.
No.
Right. So I think it's time to really deep dive into expanding our definitions of what is reef safe and what is a non-reef safe fish. Like
Yeah.
what we're doing right now in our 180 half cylinder is we've got a pair of rock beauties.
They're awesome.
They are so cool. And we're putting corals in to see what they eat. We did this with the multicolor angel
Yeah.
before we added it to our big 210-gallon display tank. We put other groups of corals in with it in a small contained space to see what it would do. Guess what? Rock beauties eat Paleothoa grandis.
Whoops.
Oops.
They
Whoops.
really like it.
Yes. And multicolor angels eat finger leathers.
Whoops.
Just the polyps. The finger leather actually can probably survive.
I mean, it's growing. I
It
trimmed
is,
it a few months
but
ago.
the polyps get eaten.
Yeah.
So we keep rock beauties with gorgonians and mushroom corals,
We,
and it's fantastic.
we have a varieties in there too.
We do, and it's doing great. We have multicolor angels, which are considered not reef safe angels, with my, I think, 20-plus-year-old bubble coral.
It's got to be older than me, Ben.
It is older than you,
Yeah.
and it's fine. The leather corals, not so much. The sponges, they're doing fine with the multicolor. So I think I would answer this question this way. Live rock, whether you establish dead rock and turn it into live rock or get real live rock, is one of the absolute, that is what made saltwater aquarium keeping possible. If you go back on the discussion forum on our watercolors listeners, Facebook listeners page, you could see the discussion about a book that I want to get my hands on from 1972. It has a section on keeping sea turtles as pets, right? There's a plethora of information in that book that is so outdated, it's ridiculous. And so doing a tank today without live rock, why would you do that?
It's like doing a tank without a filter.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
You can
I
do
guess
it.
you could.
You
but
can.
Why
Yes.
would you want to?
You can keep as a circulation the old Aquaclear cages on a Aquaclear power head as their circulation, or you can get a CJ wave maker to move the water. Right?
Yeah.
You can do that. So my answer to that question would be, let's change those definitions.
I have one final note too on it. I feel like as reef aquarists, we need to acknowledge that Fowler aquariums are reef aquariums by definition. What a reef is, just a pile of rocks.
Right.
Also,
Almost more accurate to more of the
Yeah.
ecosystems
Yes.
that they come from.
Also, I feel like so many reef keepers or saltwater aquarium keepers have this kind of like mentality that Fowler is somehow less than their reef tank, and that needs to stop too, because I think people are already spending so much money on these systems, and then they're like, well, I have to eat coral because I don't want to keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, and
My logic is, if just the same as plant tanks, if you've got a light that turns on and off, you can grow coral.
yeah,
Some
And-
coral.
Some coral, like there is a coral that you can grow, and probably with your corallivores.
Yeah. I will be forever at this point in time. I will be more impressed by any well cared for Fowler aquarium with big healthy fish than any of these fruit stand any of these fruit stand aquariums because they're cooler, they're better.
Yeah.
I don't need to see your stressed out coral beauty and your skinny tangs and your negative space aquascape. That's sad.
I really want to know if there is a fish that will eat any kind of coral.
Eat like every kind
Every
of coral.
kind of coral.
You mean?
And even the one of my absolute dream fish is an ordate butterfly. I will never keep one. I will never have one. It is an obligatory corallivore. They have to have coral in their diet.
I think I have an answer for
I
that.
highly doubt they eat every species of coral.
I feel like some of the big parrotfish, just the way they eat, they're trying to eat the rocks. and
because
the
they don't
corals
care
are
about
in the
the
way.
corals.
They're
are
not
in
going to
the
bother
way.
with the leather coral
They're gonna, no, they're
But
eat
the
through the
leather
leather
coral
coral
might be in the
to
way
get to
of
the
the
rock.
rock.
Okay. All right. All right.
Honestly,
So you found one group.
Yeah.
Allie is my role model when it comes to this. She has a tank. It's not that big. She has the fish that she loves. And, every few months she spends a $20 to $60 on a sacrificial offering that may or may not live. And your tank is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it works.
Some of those things didn't work out, but she just took it in stride as part of raising the fish she wanted to have.
Right. Yep.
And I think that's great. I think that's
Yeah.
the way to do it. I don't
I-
think you need to forego corals entirely ever.
Yeah.
But
I could
guess you
double down
could.
on this question and talk about it for an hour or two.
GSP.
And I really want to know, did we address what the listener wanted?
Hopefully.
Follow up with that one because I love that conversation very
I
much.
feel like we're all a couple beers and rum in. So
Yeah.
Yeah, D-Rock, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're going to need to give us some more detail in an email because I don't know who that person is.
All right, there we go. All right, I think this is the last question.
Yeah, last question.
Because
Yeah.
my lights just turned off.
Oh, a bonus. Ooh.
Do you want to do your bonus
Say
first
it in the mic, though.
and then end up on a final question?
Yeah. So I want to address something. So a few podcasts ago, Ben said Charles is taking a step back, and then I got a flood of DMs of people being like, "Is Charles okay?" I'm fine.
Debatable.
no.
As fine as you can be.
Exactly.
In fact,
Yes.
I think there's only good reasons. You're
Yes.
great, I think.
Yeah,
Good.
no, I feel like I should address it a little bit though, just because people were concerned.
Yeah.
So the reality is just that my career path is pulling me in directions that Ben and I, when we talked about it, I said the pull to other projects is just stronger than the pull to stay here. And so I'm volunteering at the Van Andel Education Institute. I'm actually working on making a workshop for high school students to come into the lab and screen fluorescent proteins in zebrafish. We're hoping to be able to launch that this summer. So that's just taking a lot of my mental energy that I used to spend on figuring out how to explain ideas or like what I wanted to talk about. And so you can't grow in every direction all at once. And so I had to pick something, and working with the students it's very enriching.
It's definitely the case that this is most certainly not the last podcast you're going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're glad you came for the fun one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ben texts me. He's just like, "You want to do this fun one?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah."
Oh, yeah.
Duh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But keep tabs on the Facebook group. I'm going to be making a few announcements there about a few things that I'm hoping people will get excited about. But no, I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. I've been doing this for 4 years.
Yeah.
So
And always part of the Watercolors Aquarium family.
yeah. So I appreciate the concern. I didn't respond to anyone's DMs directly. It's just a boundary I set a long time ago. So I felt the need to answer some of those.
Absolutely.
But,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep.
yeah.
Perfectly.
I don't want anyone being too worried
Yeah,
about
don't
it,
worry.
Charles.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive.
All right, Nick. You gonna go with a banger here?
I have one that I want the answer to.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm just combing through what we have left. We will definitely be doing a part 2.
Yes.
Next week?
Yes.
Yeah, let's plan on doing it next week. And if you're here now and you have a question, send that to my email info@watercolorsaquarium.gallery.com. And we'll try to squeeze that into part 2 as well.
For the question of what Melanotaenidae school to put in a 75-gallon dealer's choice, choose any.
Yep. I vote Erie and Reds, but
There you go.
up to you.
That one.
To me, the Neon Dwarfs, you can do more of them.
Yeah.
Cox.
Greycocks. Love them.
Kali Taiwa. If you want to spend a bunch of money.
Pretty much. Just pick one.
The expensive
Parva's are good
one
too.
from us.
I like to, no.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go
We'll
back
get
on.
it.
I'm
We got
like,
some nice.
I like the smaller ones. I like a
Well-bred
big group of
Bosemani.
smaller ones.
Well, the Kali
Yeah.
Taiwa are small too. They get the same size
Yeah.
as prey cocks, but they're cool.
I don't know. Listen to the Rainbow Fish episode.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
our
they're-
last question, Nick?
What is it?
Our last question of the day is from Biff, who has been in the chat and I think joined
Oh,
our
yeah.
joined our subscription today.
Mhm,
So
Welcome.
Biff asked, I've noticed an interesting difference in how my cold water tank inhabitants and tropical inhabitants act at night. My cold water tank is Medaka, ricefish, and white cloud mountain minnows. They don't really sleep like my ember tetras do in my traditional tropical tank. The ember tetras look like they've almost paused, where my cold water inhabitants never really stop moving. Why is this?
Wow. That's a really good question.
So the first thing I would go to, what were the two species of cold water?
Medaka ricefish and white clouds.
Both of those fish come from faster moving streams?
Medakas do?
Yeah.
Not
No?
always.
I
no,
think they're
they're
They
like
get
rice
swampy,
paddies.
right?
Oh,
Yeah.
rice paddies. Okay.
Yeah.
What was that theory?
Well, my follow-up question would be, what's your flow like in these two tanks?
Yeah.
That's what I was
Can
going
they
with.
Can
sleep?
they stop?
Can they stop? Right.
But you don't know of any association between like cold water or warmer water species and how they like
The only
rest?
thing I can think of is day length.
Yeah.
It does affect cold and warm water does affect the metabolism a lot.
Mhm.
I'm kind of wondering because like fish don't sleep like how we sleep,
Right.
so it could be that having a lower metabolism in slightly colder water essentially just means they can be active for a longer period of time because they're not burning as much.
Yeah.
And they're not having to forage as much to keep going. Whereas like it kind of makes sense if you're at a warmer temp that you need to eat like the emperor tetras are eating and they need to sit still when they know they
Yeah.
can't go out and eat because they're going to be burning more calories.
Mhm.
But I don't know the answer to that.
This
I don't know
strikes
how
me as
fish
more of a
metabolism-
behavioral difference than an
Yeah.
actual temperature difference.
The other thing that could be if you exist between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, your day-night cycle is essentially within a half hour of 12 hours.
Right.
Right.
And it's the same all year round.
All year round. As soon as you get further north or further south, as the temperature drops, you have seasonal light duration changes as well.
They
Like,
might just be
for
active
example-
for 18 hours regardless of lighting or something.
yes, like polar bears, for example, don't have a diurnal or nocturnal effect. Their eyes are not their main thing. They feed the same way at night as they do during the day. And for them, you wouldn't say at night or during the day. They feed the same way in the darkness as they do in the light. Because some of them spend 6 months in light and 6 months in darkness as opposed to 12 hours in light and 12 hours in darkness, right? Just absorb that for a minute. And then as you move down past the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle, or up from the Antarctic Circle, those durations change. So could there be something like we are used to right now? We get about 7 or 8 hours of daylight, and in the summer months, like on June 21, we get like almost 18 hours of sunlight. Not quite 16, I think is what it is, right? My sister lives in Homer, Alaska. She's got 3 days in December that the sun doesn't rise. So could there be something from that?
Maybe. I think this would also be something that's you're going to have a really difficult time finding any paper written on.
Yeah.
Because I think when they're talking about looking at cold water metabolism, they're going to look at like trout in the temperate zone, not like
And probably specifically on feeding and
Yeah.
energy type stuff.
I feel like a good experiment would be a fish that has a pretty wide temperature tolerance range.
yeah.
2 identical tanks, half dozen in 70 degrees
Yeah.
and half dozen in 80 degrees.
I'd be curious because we have all of those fish downstairs right now. So I'd be curious when we're done recording to see what ours are doing.
Yeah.
Because our white clouds could be sleeping, or our amber tetras could be running around like crazy.
I wonder if even if they're sleeping, can they sort of have this subconscious sense of, through their lateral line, I am close to another fish or I am not.
Well, they definitely do have that because like that's how sips.
Can they school while they're asleep?
Yeah, probably because that's how because dolphins and stuff. I know they sleep with like half their brain off. Like they can still swim and move in a direction.
With the lifestyle of an ember tetra, they might be more incentivized to. A lot of predators come out at night
Yeah.
in South America, so they might have the incentive to, if it's dark, I should be hiding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where white clouds might think, even if I'm sleeping, I should still be schooling.
Yeah. Because I mean, also if you're coming from a flowing environment, I should be moving around. I have to kind of keep because I can't either. I have to sleep on the bottom where there is predators and a crayfish is going to come
Yeah.
eat.
So the two species could be coincidental,
Yeah.
not temperature or light duration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just lifestyle.
Yeah, I like it.
All
And I
right.
mean, white clouds are gonna and your rice fish are gonna be up at the surface.
Yeah.
How do midwater fish like tetras or minnows sleep anyway? Well, we just kind of got in on
Yeah, I
that,
think so,
where
too.
we don't really know, but
Yeah.
sometimes up and sometimes down.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
I think the last question should be for Charles, which is Gunner's last question. Did you read it?
I'll read it to you.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Whales are related to wolves in their evolutionary tree. Are whale songs just an ocean howl?
I just thought you'd like that one.
I was about to say, well,
Yes
they're
and
both
no.
mammals, but
Yeah.
they're actually more closely related to cows than they are wolves.
Oh, so it's an ocean moo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
It's actually, I think if I'm picking, like, let's ignore hippos because that's like the obvious, but like, I think.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like hippos are the obvious, like, closest living terrestrial.
They're the obvious halfway point between whales and cows, is what
Right.
you're saying.
I think deer are closer than like most things. Like, I think that what they're descended from is basically a predatory deer.
Predatory
No.
deer. Like that one
No.
from Adventure Time.
Which one of those
This
work
is
best
their
with Neon
full
Tetris,
photo.
though?
Probably the hippo.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's probably accurate, though.
What was the
I mean, the
question?
whales eat krill. That's about the same size
Right,
as
that's
Neon
true.
Tetra.
Which
Yeah.
one of those species works best with Neon Tetris?
Ooh.
Mm.
Mm.
And
I'd
with
love
hippo,
to
and
see.
I think it's true.
I mean, what's biotypic with hippos? Oh, he got excited.
The Indianapolis Zoo, they have a heated pond for their hippos, and they have it full of Rift Lake cichlids.
That's
I've seen that. It's a very cool
incredible.
display.
It's a cool,
Mm.
cool. That's a
Do
biotope.
Do hippos live in the Rift Lakes?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. So think about that next time you think about dodgeball.
You really like what's going to stop a hippo from going in any body of water it wants
Yeah.
to go in?
Try.
The only thing is another hippo.
Any given Mbuna.
All right, as far as submitted questions, I think that's all we can squeeze in today.
Yeah, I
You're
think
right.
we really got to wrap up. We're
We
getting a
do.
little too
It's
silly.
late.
We do have a good stash of questions that will roll over into next week's listener questions episode. We could even take on a few more. So if you have any more questions, you can submit those to info@watercolorsaquariumgallery.com between now and next week, and we can try to squeeze those in.
Thanks for participating. This was really fun, you guys. I'm so glad we got so many in. And we'll still do next week's as a public stream, so anyone who's here this week should still be able to tune in next week.
If you're having this much fun, you really should join the YouTube membership. We have this much fun every week.
It's so worth it. We'd love to get some more.
Charles, I'm really glad we're getting you back here again next week. This is super fun. I'm glad you're here. Nick, you did an awesome job putting this group of questions together. I kind of had a feeling we'd string this into 2 weeks.
Maybe so.
And
yeah.
it's really just my little game to make sure we keep you around a little bit longer.
You do talk a
Get you
lot.
in it. I do.
We-
I like talking.
We
I
just
can't help it.
it.
Yeah.
Please make some posts to the Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast listeners group on Facebook. We love to see your input, and that group is just really supportive and awesome. And head over to watercolors.shop and see if there's anything you might like to add to your tank.
Extra special thanks to all of our YouTube members out there. William, I got to give you another shout out again. Thank you so much for doing that. Let's have lots of fun. Wait. Thank you so much for listening. Let's have lots of fun and keep those hands wet.
All right, should we leave it a minute to see if there's anything else? I think we pretty much got all the questions from.
Did we?
Yes.
That was like an amazing amount of interaction. Thank you
Yeah.
so much
It
for all
was
the interaction.
really,
It was super fun.
really good group
Yeah.
this week. So
Yeah.
everyone who joined this week has to join the membership, so you can join every week.
Yeah, and apparently William's going to pay for 5 of you, so jump on that. Man, that's awesome.
Thanks again, William.
That's
And,
great.
Thank you to everyone in the chat that's like wishing you the best. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Good people. We have
Yeah.
good people.
Yeah.
It has been. It's all
Yeah.
been very wholesome. Lots
It
of
has.
great people in the group. We get lots of great emails. Couple of weirdos every once in a while, but
It's
They
usually
don't.
not
They don't
too
make
bad.
it long. They get taken
No.
up
It's
quick.
Rare.
No.
Yeah, that's
The-
fun to see.
Like, it's amazing to watch us not have to do that,
Yes.
but like the people part of our pages come to other people's defense and
Yeah.
stuff. It's so cool.
Awesome.
You don't see that
I love
very
it.
often.
Yeah.
Watercolors watchdogs.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like not just
Release
to
the
bring people
hounds.
down like every other aquarium group, but to
Yeah.
like build people up and protect them is
Yeah.
so cool to see.
They're all like, you shouldn't do that, but it's okay because you're new. But please fix this.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Yeah,
great
for sure.
people.
Yeah.
So thank you all.